Good morning, good morning, good morning. I am going to call to order the Indian River Council Board of Directors at this time, and if you will join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Good morning. We have a busy, great, informative meeting today and a lot going to be presented, so we're going to stay right on target here. I'd like to introduce our board of directors and special guests, so if we'll just start down there with Commissioner Lober.
Certainly. Okay, that's better. I can hear myself here. I'm Brian Lober. I'm the Vice Chair of the Brevard County Commission. And I also just want to give a quick shout out to Admiral Justice Wayne Justice, who's the Chair of the Port Commission in Brevard as well.
Send it down.
Good morning. I'm Gretchen Kelly with St. Johns River Water Management District. I'm an alternate to our governing board member, Doug Bornick.
Susan Adams, Vice Chair, Indian River County Commission.
Deb Denny's, Volusia County Council.
Good morning, I'm Stacy Hetherington, Martin County Commission.
Good morning, I'm Libby Pigman. I'm the alternate for Jackie Thurlow-Lippish for South Florida Water Management District.
Good morning, Aaron Watkins, Florida Department of Environmental Protection.
Good morning, Chris Zadowski, San Lucie County Commissioner.
Good morning. Okay, I'm going to introduce some other special guests here, and they'll be addressing us here quickly, but just for introduction, we have from our EPA Region 4, our good friend Cesar Zapata, Acting Chief. Good morning. We have Jennifer DeMeo. Jennifer, good morning. Environmental Scientist with Oceans, Coastal and Estuary Section. Janine Gettle, am I saying that correctly? Is Janine here? Oh, good morning. Good morning. Water Division Director, welcome. And Natalie Ellington, Chief of Coastal and Estuary Section Water Division. Good morning, welcome. Okay, are there any agenda revisions? Kathy, I don't think so, or Dwayne, nothing going on?
No, but Madam Chair, I'd like to do an introduction, if I might.
Please.
I want to introduce our new staff member to you all. You've been interacting with her, I know, all week, but I wanted to make this official. And so we're really happy to now have filled our special projects coordinator position. You know, Kayleen Wheeler is already hard at work for us. She's been drinking from the fire hose. We call her special projects coordinator, but in fact, she will be the point staff person in our internal interactions with you, the management conference. So all of the agendas, the minutes, you know, all of the work that we do to get these meetings ready, that will be fully on her plate. She'll be reporting directly to Kathy, and so we'll talk about this a little later, but we're super happy to have her. She has private public sector experience, stormwater experience, and so we have just filled the team. So very happy to introduce Kayleen, and we're happy to have her.
Hello, Kayleen. Wonderful. Thank you. So no agenda revisions. We don't have any. Dwayne, there's no resolutions, recognitions, letters, awards. That has not changed either, correct?
That has not changed.
Okay. EPA comments. Here we are. Cesar, welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. We just here to just give you a little bit of information. I mean, we were here the last 2 days visiting a few places, different projects and so on the Indian River Lagoon. We want to thank Dwayne and his staff for taking us and taking the time to show us the projects, and Commissioner Vosky also for being with us and looking at some of the projects. It was very, very impressive, the work that you guys do every day, and all the projects that are on the ground. I also wanted to introduce our other work for EPA people, and then they will come here to talk a little bit. Janine Ghetto, which is our director for the Water Division in Region 4. and you know Jennifer, and Natalie Ellington, which is the section chief of the oceans and estuary programs in our division in the region. So I will let Janine come in and tell you a little bit about her experience yesterday and the day before in here.
Good morning.
Good
Thank you
morning.
all for the opportunity to talk to you today and to talk to all of the people participating in your meeting today. On behalf of myself, but more importantly on behalf of Mary Walker, the regional administrator, I bring you greetings from EPA and our thanks. Our thanks for the work that you do each and every day to return and to restore the waters here in this area to what we all want them to be. It is a challenge, and I have been so impressed in the last 2 days with the work that is going on here and the progress that you're making. It's a big challenge. It's not an easy challenge, and it has competing interests, and I get that. But you all, I have just been so impressed by the public-private partnerships, by the commitment at the local level and at all levels of government here in the work that's going on. And we saw some great examples of restoration. We saw some challenges and where there's been efforts that may not have bore the fruit that you were hoping for. But with each of those, we learned something that we can use to improve our efforts as we move forward. This is a very important program to EPA Region 4 and to EPA in its entirety. The administrator talks about water quality and improving water quality. Mary Walker is extremely committed to improving water quality. She talks often about being able to come down here earlier this year and do some work alongside volunteers to help restore seaweed. And she was very excited about that. So really my purpose here this morning is simply to say thank you, to say if there's ever anything that I can do for you, please just reach out to us and let us know. And congratulations on the work that you're doing here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other comments from your team, Cesar, that you'd like to share? Nobody's going to talk about the helicopter? I know about that one. Commissioners, did you want to add something?
I have about 40 minutes for later on, but
You have, no, you don't, but keep going.
I forgot you were the chair.
Yeah, I
never mind. You know, in the job as a county commissioner and as a part of this board, you know, you see a lot of things come and go, and you don't get to take pride often in what you've done and what you've accomplished. When you bring other people in and they see what you've done and they appreciate what has taken place, and the partnerships across the board, we can't do everything that we do without the umbrella of the EPA. So I just want to personally say thank you for being that umbrella, that glue that holds us all together. We have great partners up here, and we all have a part to play. But without the EPA supporting the NEP, we wouldn't be working together as well as we do. We wouldn't be able to put all those financial components together as we do and have the results that we do see. I was very proud to be a part of the tour yesterday, and Wesley's Island is going to be an award-winning, and it already is actually, and we'll talk about that later, but you know, just the things that we've done together collectively as a board and under EPA, we've been successful, and we continue to be successful because of that relationship. So thank you very much.
Very well said, thank you. We know that these problems and issues didn't occur overnight or within a 12-month grant cycle or a 2-year grant cycle, and so certainly we are increasing our moments to create a momentum for recovery and restoration, and that commitment remains high here. So thank you for all the great work. Okay, public comments. I have one card. Kathy, correct? Just one? Okay, Mr. Is it Stephen? Robert?
Good
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I'll try to be really brief. I know you have a busy agenda this morning, and I think I get up at midnight or 1 o'clock and I wrote this big, long letter to you, but I can't do that to you. I don't have that time. My name is Robert Stephen. I live here in Sebastian. I'm on one of the deep waterways of the city. I'm right on, my house heads to the southeast, where there's a big bay of water. 2 big canals come into this bay and then exit to go to the St. Sebastian River. I've been there for about 5 years, maybe 6 years now. I've noticed the life and the death of this lagoon for a while. When I first got there, it was paradise. I had birds, I had fish. There was even an alligator out there. And stormwater park across the street. I thought I was in heaven. I came here to breathe because I was having some asthma issues. And a month after I got here, an airboat came by and he started spraying the front of my yard. I know some of you know this story, so I'll try to keep it brief. But some of you don't know me, so I want to update you on this. So I asked for MSDS sheets. They said no, they couldn't give me anything. They'd have to go to the city. The city wouldn't give me anything. It took me 6 or 7 months before I found out I was being sprayed with a Agent Orange type cocktail. Now that can change. Different chemicals can go in there, but it's basically to kill things. And it did a good job. It turned the edges of the waterway black, and the boat came every month that the city had the money to pay them. And even when it was black, they kept spraying. Well, the waterway got real sick. I got sick. Actually, I was up on my roof 2 years ago, cleaning the gutters, and 2 airboats came by, and the winds were gusting 10 to 30 miles an hour, and I got the drift. I was in the hospital the next morning. I couldn't breathe. I was in and out of that pulmonary office for 6 or 7 months. They said, you got everything we got. Go home. And move away from that canal, they said. So I went back to the mountains of New Hampshire. I come back, and I was still couldn't breathe. And thank God to AstraZeneca, a German chemical company. They put me on some sort of bio stuff, and I started to organize my breathing better. I still have some problems, but it's okay. If I get clean air, I'm okay. Cutting it short, I've been fighting the city of Sebastian now for 4 or 5 years to try to get the stopping of the poisoning. Done it all sorts of different ways, recommendation from EPA, Department of Agriculture. And when I got real sick, I got the Department of Elderly to try to help me, and they turned me on to the, agriculture, wherever it was control of the chemicals, who wrote the permit, which the city doesn't recognize the permit. Said we don't have to follow the permit because it's a private waterway. It's not open to the public. Well, I have to fight that by my mind, because little kids and dogs use this waterway, and old fishermen fish in it. Well, that's not happening much anymore, and the fish are gone, and the animals are gone. Last year we had blind turtles. I don't see the blind turtles anymore. The big birds came back. They stopped spraying for about 4 months this year. Looked, when I got back from New Hampshire, I went, well, God, there is a God, thank you, thank you, thank you. Maybe the birds will come back. The birds came back, they wouldn't stay, but the big birds came back. Some of them started to nest. So I was pretty happy. Now, the federal government said, we can't control a city, we can't regulate a city. The only way you can do anything about this is to vote them out. They said, we feel you voted these people in, you got to vote them out. So we did that this year, thank God, a good chunk of them. Yesterday I got a call from my wife. The airboats were back out. They sprayed us again yesterday, day after the election. They're still in power. They've sprayed us with poison again. I go over and I looked at the truck. I've got pictures of the truck. No hazmat signs in this truck. This is a Applied Aquatics truck. It's written on the side of the Applied Aquatics. And they've changed. They've got different containers. They're all locked up, but there's no name on these containers. So it doesn't say dicot. It doesn't say Roundup. It doesn't say Aqua Black. It doesn't say this and that they had been putting in there. So I don't know what they're spraying, but when you get near the truck, the hairs on the back of my neck would stand up. I took pictures of the truck and I walked away from it. So we're still getting it. And point being here, ladies and gentlemen, I really appreciate what you've done. And Dwayne DeFries and his people are really organized. I'm awed how organized you guys are and how great a job you're doing. But until we stop poisoning our waterways, we're never going to save this lagoon. And I'm positive of this. I live on it. Every day, I have my coffee out there looking at it. From here to that road is where the lagoon is. The wildlife can't stand it. The fish can't stand it. I've got 4 dead men on my street. Oh yeah, we all had previous problems. But you can't keep doing this. Wait until the country of Vietnam gets up in front of the federal court in California. They'll tell you what it's like after the fact. That's what's going to happen here, unless we stop using poisons. And we can do that. I know we can. Enough of my time. I hope I didn't ruin your day. But I'm getting sick.
Thank you, sir.
Again. See you.
Thank you, sir. I'm not going to make any comments on that because we have no control over any of the cities and the jurisdictions, but respect your input. Thank you. Kathy, no other cards for public input? Okay, we're going to do some water quality reports. I think, where's Dr. Jacoby? There he is. Good morning.
Good morning. Chuck Jacoby with the St. Johns River Water Management District and the chair of your STEM Advisory Committee. So I'm going to talk about the northern part of the lagoon, the sort of St. Johns portion. Salinity has been in the upper 20s in Mosquito Lagoon and down at Vero, so at the two ends. And in between, it's a little lower, it's around 20. So upper 20s is about 1.017 specific gravity, and the 20s is around 1.010. The temperatures just recently, like about a week ago, dropped about 3 degrees centigrade or about 5 degrees Fahrenheit. So the water is a little cooler than it has been. Overall, the chlorophyll values have gone down since like August, which is about the last time I think I was in here. Initially they started, and there were still some in some places like Banana River Lagoon and the northern part of Indian River Lagoon where the residence times are fairly high. And though they were still up around 100 micrograms per liter, but they've come down, and they're now mostly down in the sort of 10-20 range throughout most of the lagoon. That chlorophyll, the players that make up the chlorophyll have changed. So the very, very small, what we call nanoplankton, which includes the brown tide, which was problematic for a fair while, that's receded. And we're now seeing that where there is chlorophyll, it's made up of the things that were more typical before that 2011 bloom, which are a couple of the dominant ones are Pseudonychia, which is a diatom, and then Pyridinium, which is a dinoflagellate, which is the one that gives the bioluminescence that all the kayakers love. And those levels there were in terms of counts, there were 400,000 or 500,000 cells per liter early on and through September. And as we got into October and a little later, that number started going down. Now those blooms, they extend all the way through the lagoon down into Miami-Dade County. So you get these blooms. These are part of the way the system behaves. So what does all this mean? Why is that important? Well, that means that because things have been relatively calm, dissolved oxygen levels have stayed relatively good. 5 milligrams, which is 3 milligrams above 2, which is the point where you get stress. So no major fish kills. I mean, some fish killed in little pockets where you get freshwater inputs and things like that, but no major fish kills. Water clarity, likewise, has improved. So Secchi depth, which is one of the ways that we look at water clarity, that's putting the disc down in the water, seeing where it disappears from view. Back in the bloom days, it could be like 0.2 of a meter, and now it's more up around 0.5 and above up to 1 meter or beyond. So what that translates into in terms of habitat is that we had a fair bit of benthic macroalgae growth. Caulerpa was one of the prominent ones. But the summer transects also showed that seagrasses extended the transects on average across the whole lagoon by about 8 meters, which is, a positive sign. Now it's patchy, very patchy, but there are seagrasses deeper. And it seems as if they're not actually growing from the shoreward end out. They kind of grow from in the middle and go both directions. So, but we're seeing some seagrass recovery. We don't expect the 2019 maps, which will be ready early next year, to show tremendous recovery, but probably not, at least not a loss again. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Commissioner.
Just a question. So you're saying on the macroalgae, it was starting more in the middle of the body of water and spreading outward?
The macroalgae tended to grow pretty much throughout the depth where the light's available. But the seagrasses
The
don't
seagrass.
seem to be growing from the shoreline out. They seem to be growing from slightly deeper. And that may have
That's
to do...
odd.
Well, it may have to do with the disturbance. So the closer to shore, the more you get the wave disturbance. A little bit offshore, and the sediments are a little calmer, and that gives the seagrasses a chance to get established. It would be like, you know, kids coming along and tearing the sod up in your yard just after you put it down. The waves, same kind of thing with the waves.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Thank you, sir.
Oh, and I'd like to introduce Jose Vega from St. Lucie County, who's going to give us a little update on stormwater in that region.
Very good. Good morning, Mr. Vega.
This will be quick and brief. I was asked to provide the council with a quarterly estimate of our lower basin runoff, particularly in our area. The rain and flow comes from our South Florida Water Management District DB Hydro database. This is where we get this data from. The flow monitoring stations are the S48, the C23 basin, S49 South station. The C24 basin, we use the Gordy South for the 10 Mile Creek area. And the total nitrogen and phosphorus concentrations are based on the DEP's WASH model. And since this is my first update, I'm going to go ahead and give you the first 3 quarters of the year. It'll take really quick here. Quarter 1, according to our calculations using these data points, we have 44 tons of total nitrogen, 9 tons of total phosphorus. Quarter 2, we have 35 tons of total nitrogen and 7 tons of total phosphorus. And then quarter 3, a big one here, is 167 tons of total nitrogen and 31 tons of total phosphorus. Total for the year thus far is 246 tons of total nitrogen and 46 tons of TP for a local basin runoff coming out of the North Fork. Okay, any questions?
Madam Chair?
Yes,
Jose,
Commissioner.
are you checking the rain gauge as to how those elements come together?
Yes, sir. The rain data is coming directly from the DB Hydro database of the district in that area in the North Fork. If I did do some charts, and it seems to be, you know, collaborating with the flows. So as it rains, the flows increase. That's pretty much
This, you know, as part of these reports, you know, we talk about some of the projects that need to be done, and the C23, C24 reservoir is one of those. And I'm sorry, Martin County, until we can get our federal partners to move up the schedule for the C23, C24 reservoir, we're going to continue to pound you with all these contaminants, and we're sorry about that. So my hope is, as we continue to move forward with SERP and SEP projects, that these can be funded and begin to be built with our partners at South Florida as well. I mean, this is our basin coming down to you, and again, I apologize, but we have been working very hard to try and change that. So hopefully these conversations will continue with these reports showing exactly what we're doing to you and the St. Lucie River. So we'll continue to work hard to change that.
I plan on providing one each quarter when you guys come and do the meetings.
Thank you, Brother.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Katie. Katie Bowes, there she is. Good morning.
I have a few slides. Can I change them on here? Okay. Good morning. I'm Katie Bowes. I am the environmental specialist and acting environmental programs coordinator for Martin County. And I'm going to be giving you guys the South IRL water conditions update. So a big thing we all know is what's going on in the Southern IRL has a big component to do with what's going on in Lake Okeechobee. So virtually we had almost no discharges since the spring, and the lake has stayed on the low end of the operational band for most of this year. And because of that, the SAV growth in the lake has exploded from 5,000 to 20,000 acres. And this picture in the background is some of the eelgrass that was taken, photo was taken this year, and it looks pretty good to me. So because of that, lately the C44 canal has actually been discharging back into the lake. And I threw this graph together to look at, since we've had pretty much no discharges during the rainy season, what is the Southern IRL being influenced by? Is it more so the lake or more so the local basin influence? So if you see on the table below, the combination of local basin runoff from the C23 and the C24 canal was close to 200 CFS of a daily average since during the rainy season, and the S80 structure through the C44 canal was slightly higher at 255 CFS. So it was about equal influence from both. September was also our driest month on record for Martin County at 3.63 inches, and October was slightly higher at 4.29 inches. And looking at the temperature over the past 30 days, that's at Speedy Point, which is right at the Roosevelt Bridge and Stewart. The temperature has stayed mostly between the 27 to 30 degrees Celsius range, and the salinity between about 15 and 24 parts per thousand, which is pretty good for oyster recruitment. So, cross our fingers for this year. We had no verified reports of blue-green algae in the estuary during the rainy season. And the last weekly update from when I made this presentation last week was that there were no bloom conditions reported in Lake Okeechobee. And lastly, looking at Enterococcus, this is the last 2 months. We've been doing mostly well, a lot better than last year, but there were a couple minor blips at Layton Park and at Roosevelt Bridge. But overall, I'd say we're averaging in the good range for Enterococcus. And anyone have any questions? Yep. All right,
Great
thank you.
report. No blue-green algae. Yay. That's great news. Okay, so here we're going to start our lightning round here. We have 9 presenters, and thank you for the PowerPoints. I've actually reviewed them all. So you're going to have 5 minutes to present and 5 for Q&A, and we're moving on. And we will move on. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, presenters, be prepared to rotate. So, Mr. DeFries, I think, Dwayne, you're gonna present first, and you have the agenda. Do they all know where they are on the timeline?
Yes, and actually Bob Musser is here today, so I'm off the hook because I was really worried that maybe I'd go long and then set a bad standard. So Bob is here.
I wanted you to be the first, Dwayne. This is
so Bob will be here to present.
Okay, good, very good. So you know the lineup, you know where you are on the agenda. Let me just read it out real quick. We've got the Port Canaveral, then we have Willoughby Creek Stormwater, then Living Shorelines, Tomoka State Park, West Wasabo Phase 2, Restore Our Shores Filter, Harmful Algal Bloom Monitoring, Griffiths Landing at Blue Crab, Sebastian Septic to Sewer, and I don't know, did we strike this last one, Wesley's Island? Didn't you? What? Okay, and then then the last shall be first. then we'll finish up with Wesley's Island. So Council, and the other thing that I would ask you is, if you've got a question, let's not get repetitive. So we will alternate here going forward, not on the same, different ones, but anyway. So we're going to start this, and I am going to set my 5-minute timer for presentations. If you don't get through all your PowerPoints, and I don't know how any of you are going to get through all of your slides in 5 minutes, they are public record. We have them, so we will review them, and they are public record on our website should anybody choose to follow up. So with that, who's coming up first on, okay. And then we need Willoughby Creek. You are up like immediately after. When I say immediately, immediately. So intro yourself and let's go.
No pressure, right, Dwayne? Good morning, everybody. I'm Bob Musser. I'm the Senior Director of Environmental at Port Canaveral. And I'm going to present to you today and talk about the partnership that the Port has with the estuary program. Interesting note, I'm on your management board, and I was actually appointed to the management board before I came back to the Port in January of 16. I think Dwayne presented, and they said, we got somebody coming back, and he would be great to be on there. So it's been my honor to have served in that position. Some of you, I think, remember back in 2016, Port Commission approved $100,000, and it was presented to the council here I believe, in June of 16, and that was for specifically looking at the knowledge and awareness of the public and how to have outreach on that to improve the awareness of the issues of the lagoon. Real quick, Port Canaveral is a special district. We're a special district of the state, and we are one of the economic drivers in Brevard County. We were also, I believe, the first member of the Innovators and Investors program, the IRLI Squared program, and that's when we came forward with this funding. Initial portion of the study, major portion of the study was done by Dr. Martha Monroe with the University of Florida, and they looked at different things, beliefs, attitudes, what do people know, what they don't know, what are they doing in their own homes and everything. There's a number of different sessions that were done, surveys that were done, and pilot tests, and these are some of the survey results that came out about what people already know, what they're doing, what they may not do. And the main thing that this funding provided was this acted as seed money to expand this communications program and this outreach program for the estuary program. Interesting results here of some of the things that people are not likely to do, what they may do, or what they lack knowledge of. These results are going to be included in additional future surveys and outreach to the public, and I know Dwayne could go into this in a lot more detail, but one of the items and several of the items that came out of this initial port funding are listed here. The first is this attitudes and belief study through UF, health assessment through MRC, the StoryCorps, which is going to look at, I believe, all the 32 vital signs and have a video vignette for each one that the public can click on and get more information. Additional information coming out with the community guide to the CCMP, updated website, and the last one that I think you're going to see during Dwayne's presentation for his update is going to be the call to action video. And this video was debuted a couple weeks ago at our evening commission meeting. A lot of good information on it. It's about a 6-minute video, and I think it was done fantastically. And it was presented to the management board earlier this week, so you'll get to see that today. So, with that, did I meet my 5 minutes? Or
You have 1.5 minutes if you'd still like to talk.
Oh, okay. I was trying to speed it up. So, with that, if there's any questions.
Okay, we'll go to questions. Thank you. Council?
Can he concede his time to St. Lucie?
He cannot take his time.
Usually I go long, so.
Well, that's a great report, and I see some people in the audience trying to take snapshots. You can have this link. You can see all of this. Kathy, do we have the link for these? They will be on our website, so you can capture everything that you're going to see here, all the PowerPoint you'll have access. We'll make sure you have access to. Make it a little easier for you. Okay.
Well, with that, I just want to say that Port Canaveral is very proud of our partnership that we have with the estuary program, and we look forward to continuing that and in our involvement. And I think you're going to see some great things today that have been done as part of this partnership. So.
Thank you. We appreciate your partnership.
Thank you.
Thank you. You just saved Dwayne from presenting. Thank you. Okay, thank you. And next we have Willoughby Creek. Good morning.
Good morning again. All right, I'm going to be talking to you guys about Martin County's Willoughby Creek STA retrofit project. This is adjacent to the Manatee Pocket in Port Salerno, which eventually drains into the St. Lucie Estuary and the Southern IRL. This was John's deal. He made this video. So at the yellow tack mark is where the STA is going to be located. So you can see the St. Lucie River and the water body that the STA is going to treat. Ooh. This is John's presentation, so don't blame me if it's weird. Okay, so on the left in red, this is the drainage area. This is about 200 acres of industrial impervious area, and the sheet flow off of here is very quick, and it's led to some flooding issues in downstream neighborhoods. So in the orange and blue, you can see where we're gonna put the shallow planted STA and the deep water lake, which is a typical structure for our STAs. The objectives of this project, it was previously developed stormwater area, but we did determine because of downstream flooding and other issues that there needed to be more retention. It's projected to reduce nutrient loads to the St. Lucie River and estuary and ultimately the southern IRL. TP reduction is expected to be 60%, TN at 35%, and TSS by 85%. So like I said, it will improve downstream flooding issues and provides 19 acre-feet of water quality treatment for the 222 acres of the contributing watershed. So the IRL NEP generously donated $260,000 for this project. And the revenue total was almost $3 million, so very large project. It's currently under construction and it's expected to be completed in March. So these are some progress photos of our construction. And I can talk as fast as the radio people giving the fine print, so if you have any questions.
You're doing great. It's a solid project. It's a very, very good project. Are you ready for Q&A?
Sure.
Council, comments? Go ahead. Yes.
I just want to make a comment that it's a great example of how partnerships, are to work and how this council is involved with those partnerships, because if you look at that funding slide, it took a number of different partnerships to make it happen.
Definitely.
So it's an excellent project.
Okay.
And with the measurable outcomes, I think that's really solid too, looking at all of these projects here. There's actually measurable outcomes in what's being achieved, so.
Definitely the total suspended solids will be a great contribution.
Very good. Anything else? Wow, this is really
Thank you.
good. Thank you so much. Okay, good morning. Living Shoreline, Tomoka State Park. This is Volusia County.
Yes.
Welcome, good morning.
Good morning, Council. I'm Annie Roddenberry with Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, representing the Living Shoreline work that we did up in Volusia County in partnership with the University of Central Florida, the Park Service, and with support of the IRL National Estuary Program and IRL Council. So we're up in the northern reaches of the IRL planning boundary here in Tomoka State Park. You can see it's a really unique area. There's a basin right there, really rich brackish system along the ICW, and we're not the only ones to recognize the ecological value of this area. There are 6,000-year-old shell middens there from the Native Americans. There are multiple Native American settlements there over time, as well as plantations in more recent history. Now it's set aside as a state park where folks can enjoy multiple recreational opportunities, but the park was experiencing severe erosion along their banks in the last few years. They used some coquina riprap, you can see in the bottom right photograph, on some of the more severely eroding areas, but they wanted a softer approach along some of their banks to help stabilize those midden and burial grounds, preserve those cultural resources, but also maintain the natural aesthetic of the park. So we teamed up with UCF. We contributed our marine and estuarine habitat funds about $41,000, and then with support from a National Estuary Program grant for about $37,000 and some match from University of Central Florida, we were able to stabilize 1,000 meters of shoreline and complete a year of monitoring to make sure that this was working. So we're talking about $100 per meter for living shoreline stabilization here. And we were able to successfully do this through 7 community events. You can see the number of different components that we use there on the top right. We use oyster shell bags, mangroves, and smooth cordgrass plants. We could not have done this without our partners. CCA showed up with boats and volunteers. The Marine Discovery Center Shuck and Share program supplied the oysters as well as volunteers. And it's worth noting that the Shuck and Share program has received several years of funding and support from the National Estuary Program. So it's great to see these projects build on each other year after year. After our year of monitoring, we're able to say that we had a positive effect on habitat structure and shoreline stability. I'm just going to go through this part quickly, but you can see that our plant survival numbers are quite high, 80 to 90% for our different species. In fact, with the Spartina alterniflora, that smooth cordgrass, after our first month of monitoring, we had a hard time telling individual plants from one another. So then we began measuring just density instead of individual plant survival. We saw a lot of convergence. So the density is what you see on the bottom right graph, and you can see a steady climb. The different color bars just represent different phases of the project, but you see a similar pattern of all those phases from before stabilization to up to a year and a half after. And our mangroves experience very similar survival. This graph is showing, again, those different phases represented by different colors, and this is percent cover of vegetation. So we see the same pattern, again, starting about 10% cover before we did the restoration. We saw some nice growth, a little bit of decline when we slipped from that fall to winter senescence period. The plants die back a little bit, and then growth again in the spring and summer. And we're able to document that up to a year and a half from when we did the installation. So we saw a lot of mobile invertebrates using our oyster bags. We had some low oyster recruitment and low oyster survival on those bags. We're still watching that, but we know that those bags are providing a really important wave break to help keep those plants in place and allow them to stabilize that shoreline as they grow and send that root structure down. Graphs say one thing, but pictures can really tell the story. Here you can see that bare shoreline, and then as those plants grow in. It's also worth noting that some of that existing and remaining vegetation behind those mangroves you can see was able to expand because it was so well protected by the components that we put in. If you've ever worked with UCF, you know they don't do anything halfway. They use this project as a high impact practices course. These are memorable, engaging experiences for their students that provide leadership opportunities. So these students were completely in charge of one community event that included marketing volunteers, calculating how many materials they would need, how do we get those materials, how do we make them, how do we get them to the site, are we in compliance with our permits? They had to do everything. So you can see the flyer they made there on the left. And these students absolutely blew it out of the water. You can see the turnout, their marketing worked well. We had over 90 people show up to that community event. And in the top right, they're leading everybody in oyster storytelling yoga before the hard work begins. So they went above and beyond and created some really meaningful habitat at the site. They were recognized by the Ormond Beach Mayor and the City Council in an official proclamation. So April 17th, 2019 was declared UCF Tomoka State Park Shoreline Stabilization Day. And that was just a really neat way to recognize these students and their hard work and contributions to this project. So thank you very much. From our side on FWC, we couldn't be happier with how this project is turning out, and we hope you all feel the same.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Council, questions, comments? Just one comment on I love the shuck and share. I am such a huge fan of shuck and share for a lot of reasons, but it's interesting that you connected it with a wave break, not just a restoration and the stabilization, but the buffer and the wave break in that area. And I think that's probably gone uncommented on, and one of the strengths of that, because there's some that think that it's really a great program, there's others that say it doesn't work, but your pictures here absolutely paint a very positive picture, and it's great that you're getting the next generation involved in this. I don't know that I do oyster yoga, but it's successful, so that's wonderful. Thank you so much. Council, any other comments or anything?
I would just commend the amount of different groups you pulled together to pull this project off. That's pretty awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Before we get the next presenter, I'd like to introduce, I think we have San Sebastian Church Homeschools just joined in us. So with Margarita Hernandez, is this your group?
Yes, and thank you so much for the parentheses there. Yes, this is the homeschool group of the St. Sebastian Catholic Church. They were interested to know what goes on in City Hall, and so thank you so much. We wanted to allow them the opportunity to come and see what really goes on in council chambers. So yes, that's why they're here.
Welcome. Welcome. Good morning. So when you grow up, these chairs, you'll have bigger leather chairs than this, but welcome. Welcome, welcome. And we're the Indian River Lagoon Council, not the City Commission, but it's the same chambers, and it's just folks like us that sit here and do what we need to for the citizens that put us here, and that's you. That's you. Actually, what we're doing, these projects that you see with this restoration on the water and protecting the water, it's going to be your generation that reaps the best benefits for what we're doing. We are preserving our shores and our watersheds and springs for generations to come. So, welcome. You're welcome, and you're welcome to stay as long as you choose. Next one, come on up. Come on up. By the way, you guys are doing really well. This is.
Don't go. The best part's about that.
They must have seen your presentation, Vinny.
So thank you. I want to introduce myself, Vincent Burke, Director of Utility Services for Indian River County. I also want to thank, obviously, the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program Board, Dr. DeFries, even Frank Sasuma, who used to work with our Juna Varigota VARV office. I want to thank the district that has representatives here, Abby Johnson, as well as the DEP that has been instrumental in coming together. So as Commissioner Dazowski said this morning, partnership is critical. Sorry about the name.
Chris is good.
My first Trump. And I'll go into that a little bit more. So just a quick history here. I'm not going to bore you with some of the details because I'm on a timeline, but you'll notice in red the area that we're trying to highlight is when we said we're shovel ready, we were meaning that. And so we acted very quickly. The board made a decision to support this project. We went to our board to execute that agreement, and then within 139 days from that execution, we were actually digging dirt. So we did construction in 2019. We followed up this year. We had administrative extension of that contract. We had some issues with the power, but we are in essence done. We have the DEP clearance, and that system is in operation. So here's a location map. You'll see on the east side of the Indian River Lagoon, running north-south is US 1. Just to the west of that is the area in question, the West Robosso Phase 2. I can tell you that when I got to the county in 2012, we had just completed Phase 1, and this is a project that has been on our timeline for quite some time. So the genesis has been here for quite some time, and we want to recognize those partners that have stepped up to the plate to be able to support us in moving this forward. Here's just a quick graphic showing some of the green areas that are developed, some of the yellow ones that are vacant. We were able to find funding to put the laterals not only for the structures that have been connected, but also for future parcels that will connect. We have a commercial quarter on the top part of the screen along 510 and Daisy Hope Center on the west side where there's some after-school programs through the county and through the folks in the West Robosso area. So here's the ones in purple that actually did get connected as part of this process. You'll notice that there's some hard to read text in red that there's actually structures there, but they're uninhabited. We're working with code enforcement to deal with some of those issues. We did have 100% of those occupied structures connected. 65 septic tanks were abandoned. So here's the sign that I was talking about earlier, just again to recognize the partnership from multiple entities, not only the Board of County Commissioners for their direction, but also the district, the council here today, and the FDEP for stepping up to support this important project. Just some pictures of the wet well. We had a lift station going in. I had to dig down, obviously, constrained by gravity. We had some unusual drainage issues along the way. Anytime you're digging up dirt, you try to find stuff. On the top left-hand part of the screen, these were construction projects that were unknown to us, but some old abandoned drainage structures that we had to deal with when we were putting in the gravity. Less than stellar coffee can type of structures that almost had direct discharges to the environment. You can see on the bottom part of the screen, we had a septic system that was cracked and open to water from above. And then we were waiting for some time with FPL. They were doing some other things. Obviously, we had some delays with the three-phase power that had to be brought in. Ultimately, we did get the FPL energized to be able to provide power to the lift station. And here's just some road restoration that we had with respect to the gravity line once it was put in place. So short and sweet. Again, I appreciate the time and effort that the council had. I'm available for any questions.
That's one word I wouldn't use for septic to sewer, short and sweet.
For the presentation, not the sewer.
Sorry, that won't put me on tilt. That's like an oxymoron, but council, any comments?
I'll just make one comment that for those that are unfamiliar with this area, it is an economically depressed area with some significant infrastructure and service deficiencies over the years. So it is not only wonderful to be able to provide the environmental amenities of the septic to sewer project, but also just to open that area up and provide adequate and appropriate infrastructure. So we are very appreciative of everybody that helped us get this project done, and we're happy to see it come to fruition.
Well, it looks like a great project, and it's through the years. This is a heavy lift. Projects like this are a very, very heavy lift, because I think we're all involved in them with them at some part in our districts and in our counties. Let me ask you, this project, this is water quality, but did you find that you also improved the road infrastructure too?
Yes,
It
absolutely.
kind of goes hand in hand, doesn't it?
And I would even say that some of the folks that have lived in that area have had less than stellar relationships with the county. And through the infrastructure, we are rebuilding trust and also forging a relationship that I think will last for many years.
That's invaluable. That's absolutely invaluable. And I think that gets lost so much. I know it certainly did in Volusia County, that anytime we do a infrastructure project with roads, bridges, intersections, we're improving water quality. At the same time, we do water quality, we're improving the other infrastructure. It's hand in hand, it's not separate. And I don't think, as policymakers, we've probably done a good enough job in connecting the complete impact of the communities. And that's great. That's a wonderful story that needs to be told. That's a story in itself. That's wonderful to the community. So thank you for that.
Thank you again.
Commissioner.
Sure. The other impact of this is the economic side of this, for the value in the homes. If you take septic to sewer, you're adding probably $10,000 to $15,000 value to each home, and that's huge. So trying to talk other residents in St. Lucie County into septic to sewer and water as opposed to well, and creating that opportunity to connect everything and then add the value to the properties.
Good point. Yeah.
So that's another side effect.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good job. Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for having us. I hate to disappoint, but we did not partake in any oyster yoga during the course of this project, unlike Annie's group.
It's not too late. We're going to have a class.
We still can. We still can. So good morning. I'm Kelly Schaefer from Brevard Zoo's Restore Our Shores. I'm our Conservation Outreach Coordinator, and I just wanted to extend a thank you to the IRL NEP for the opportunity to pursue this project, and we're really proud of what we've been able to accomplish, and we just wanted to share a little bit of that with you. So to start us off, we had decided to plant a portion of shoreline to go in conjunction with an oyster reef. So I'm going to kind of delve into that with a few objectives. So to hold 20 community events using 1,500 Brevard County residents and visiting volunteers in order to foster and harvest a combination of 1,800 plants in order to plant 800 feet of shoreline. So as far as our community events, we set out with the goal of 20. We ended up holding 91 community events. So just a little snapshot of what we were able to do. We had some students at Divine Mercy Catholic Academy. They were able to foster 24 red mangroves for us. We were proud to work with those guys. In the second quarter, we were able to attend the Indian River Steam Festival, and we actually made seed bombs with those kids to actually introduce them to the idea of native shoreline species to go in conjunction with our mangrove project. In the third quarter, we worked with campers at Palm Bay Public Library to foster 40 white mangroves, kind of extend out from the regular red mangrove route. And then in the last quarter, we were actually able to work with Titusville High School to foster 225 red mangroves. So they have quite a large nursery going right now for us. So as far as volunteer contributions, we actually ended up with a total of 1,995 volunteers contributing just over 3,000 hours for us. So we were able to work with students at Turner Elementary School to foster 16 red mangroves, and also campers at the Environmental Learning Center. We extended our reach just a little bit down south, and they were able to learn about oysters and mangroves and the importance of living shorelines with some hands-on activities. In the third quarter, we were able to work with Edgewood High School, and they actually returned 92 fostered red mangroves for us. So we have a nice picture of those with their advisor, Mr. Silsick. So they had done a fantastic job growing those for us. And then we were able to work with DeGroot Public Library, fostering 19 red mangroves over a summer program. And then to go into our deliverables, hopefully I'm keeping it brief like everyone else, we actually ended up fostering 1,202 plants, and we ended up planting 387 individuals. So our planting that we ended up doing was at Coconut Point. So we have plans to make a living shoreline out of this eel's property, and it'll consist of oysters as well as shoreline species. Now, oyster installation is preferred to be prior to the planting as to not damage the plants during reef construction, but unfortunately we've experienced a little bit of a hold with our permitting process, so we have had a bit of a setback with that. So we've been pushed back a little bit on our planting, but we did go ahead and plant 150 feet of that 800-foot shoreline with 387 individuals. We did that with a group of 8 to 13-year-old campers over the summer. And so we do have plans to plant the rest of this location, and the IRL NEP has been very helpful in helping us to resolve these issues that we've been having. And after that planting, unfortunately, we went right into hurricane season, and Hurricane Dorian made its way through, unfortunately resulting in a significant washout of the smaller species as well as a few of the larger ones. Our team did go back out and replant these plants, and we were able to restore about 20 of the mangroves and about half of the knotgrass. So we do have plans to add more species to this area as well as finish that planting once those oyster reef permits have been received. And I think I'm good to go for Q&A if you guys are ready.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Council? So, what intrigued me was fostering mangroves.
Yes.
That's, I guess they just take them home or wherever they are, and they take care of the mangroves, and they bring them back and you plant them.
They do. So we're a little bit limited on storage space at the zoo, so we do
Right.
rely on volunteers to be able to foster mangroves for us. I'm sure many of you know they take quite a long time to grow until they have that decent root structure that they'll be able to hold onto the sediments for us and really result in their full capacity out on the shoreline. So we rely on our volunteers to take these guys home, foster them for a significant amount of time, bring them back to us, and then hopefully those same volunteers can actually assist in the shoreline planting so they can see the process the whole way through.
What's a significant amount of time? Are you looking 6 months, 2 years?
A little bit longer these days, so that's why we actually included the harvest portion into the proposal for this one, because we wanted to facilitate the fostering and the care of these mangroves to get the education aspect out there. But unfortunately, these mangroves that we fostered this year will not be ready by that time. We usually like them to keep them for a few years before they'll be ready to grow. So that's why we added the harvest portion in, so that we could harvest or purchase mangroves that'll be a little bit larger for this planting.
Wonderful. Commissioner?
I'm sure. With the fostering, I guess that they're probably not all on the water, the kids taking it home. Do you create a process by which you get the mangroves to become salt tolerant?
Yes, so, sorry to cut you off, but once we receive the mangroves back at the zoo, and we go ahead and we salt acclimate them until they're ready to be planted. So we bring them back, and we know when we have a planting, so we plan ahead of time, and we set up pools at the zoo, and we test salinity daily, and kind of ramp them up slowly to where they're going to be perfect for when they'll go into the lagoon.
Great.
Obviously, when they keep them, they're not lugging water out from the lagoon every day. They're using tap water or well water to grow these guys. So we do that acclimation back at the zoo.
And that's just an important thing for those who are, just generally good people at home. If you're doing this at home and you're doing it on your own, make sure that you get them to be salt tolerant, because if you go to plant them and they're not going to make it. So
Can be a little bit of a shock. All right.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you so
Council,
much.
anything else?
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to jump in this one in particular. Our CCMP has contemplated kind of the scale of habitat restoration lagoon-wide. And here's a perfect example, in fact, a couple of these projects. If you think we're building a community, you have to have enough bricks and mortar to actually build the buildings. And so we're almost 100% sure that we don't have enough capacity yet with seagrasses, with mangroves, with oyster shell, clams. We've got a project. And so really what we are beginning to do is to actually strategically build capacity to do the bricks and mortar of restoration. Because if we're not growing these mangroves, or yesterday we looked at seagrasses, if you're not 2 or 3 years ahead of the need, you get a project going, you simply don't have enough material to do the work. And this is going to be a continuing challenge, and one of the needs for increased recurring funding, because we're going to need to build that capacity at places like Marine Discovery Center, Brevard Zoo, Florida Oceanographic, Harbor Branch. And so we see that as a challenge for us as we move forward.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you, Council. Appreciate it, guys.
I would agree. That's very well stated. That's another message and story that we need to populate. We need to foster that and get that to our legislative delegation. Thank you so much. Okay, microalgae and harmful algal bloom monitoring. Good morning.
Good morning. Hello. I am Malcolm McFarland, research scientist at Harbor Branch Oceanographic down in Fort Pierce. And I'm going to tell you about what we've been doing monitoring microalgae and harmful algal blooms in the lagoon.
Fascinating.
So just so we're all on the same page, what I'm talking about are the microscopic plants that really form the base of aquatic ecosystems, especially in the Indian River Lagoon. These are essential components of the ecosystem. However, as we continue to add nutrients and as environmental conditions change, we've found that some of these species can grow out of control and start to cause problems. And this is an example on this slide of a few of the species in the lagoon, where they're located, and species that have caused problems for us in the recent past. These include things that Chuck has already mentioned, like the Oreoumbra, which is up in the Banana River and northern Indian River Lagoon. This can produce really high turbidity and kill seagrass and things like that. And then down in the southern St. Lucie estuary portion of the lagoon, I think everyone's familiar with the blue-green algae blooms and the microcystis, which has been a real problem. Thankfully not this past year, but in previous years has been a real issue. There are also some other organisms like the Karenia brevis, which is a real big problem on the west coast, but only occasionally shows up here on the east coast. And then some other organisms that cause various problems. So the reason we're concerned about these harmful algal blooms is because, well, it's for a number of reasons. A lot of them produce toxins, which are a direct threat to human and animal health. Their overgrowth can be a real risk to ecosystem stability and the structure of the ecosystem in the lagoon. They can shade seagrasses, cause seagrass deaths, and other knock-on effects. And obviously they're usually unsightly. They can cause things like fish kills, which are detrimental to tourism and local economies. You can see by the short list of headlines here, this is something that can, it really, when it happens, can have a negative impact on people's image of the lagoon and tourism. Here you can see a fish kill, or a couple results of fish kills caused by the Oreoumbra, and also by Karenia, and produces a big mess, can be really unsightly, and obviously is not indicative of a healthy ecosystem. We expect problems with these guys to be increasing with climate change, and as human populations along the coast here continue to modify the natural environment. And the goal is, from my perspective as an ecologist, is to understand the bloom dynamics so that we can better mitigate their effects, we can prevent them from being so catastrophic. So what we're doing with the NEP funding that we've got this past year is we are focusing on the southern half of the lagoon. Ed Flips is focusing on the northern half of the lagoon. So we have 5 stations, which you can see in the map on the right there, stretching from Sebastian River all the way down to the middle of the St. Lucie estuary. We go out a couple times a month. We collect samples from these sites. We also take in-water water quality measurements, things like temperature, salinity, dissolved oxygen, chlorophyll. We bring those samples back to the lab. We analyze them with a microscope, so we do direct cell counts, so we see what species are there. We can identify harmful algae that we need to keep track of, we want to be aware of, and we do cell counts so we know how abundant they are. For the smaller stuff, we use a flow cytometer, which gives us counts of the very, very smallest algae, which includes the microcystis, which has been a big problem. So we've started to amass a pretty good data set we've got about a year's worth of data so far, and this just shows you sort of what that looks like. So this is for about a year's worth of data from October to October. In the top right, you can see total cell counts, and you see for our 5 different stations, and there's quite a bit of variability there, so there's a lot to keep track of, and some very high cell abundances, which, if we are dealing with toxic species, that could really be a cause for concern. So we also have much more species-specific data. In the bottom right, I'm just showing cell counts for Pseudonychia, which is one particular harmful algae that we're keeping our eye on. This is not something that's caused a big problem in the lagoon yet, but it is known to produce a toxin called domoic acid, which is responsible for amnesic shellfish poisoning, which causes you to lose your memory, as you might suspect from its name. It's also, fun fact, thought to be the inspiration behind Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. Domoic acid poisoning in animals also has neurotoxic effects, particularly in birds. So with all this species data that we're keeping track of, we are also compiling all this data. We can start to do some statistical modeling, which is what you see on the left here, and we can see that in this statistical model, Pseudonychia, one of these potentially harmful species, does stand out as a big player. So something we're keeping our eye on, and we're continuing to look at these water samples and continuing to do these analyses thanks to this NEP funding. And I also just want to say this particular project is really well coordinated with some of the other research projects we've got going on at Harbor Branch that are focused on the lagoon. And so it's really well, it's very complementary to things that we're doing with NASA. We have a couple projects looking to better use satellite imagery to monitor blooms and water quality from satellites and other remote sensing platforms. We have some
Can I
equipment.
get you to summarize?
Summarize? Sure.
Yes.
Yes. Well, I just want to make the point that we have these other projects that are very complementary to the NEP funding, and both will benefit greatly from each other.
Thank you so much.
Okay. You're welcome.
Okay, so council.
Just a quick question. I was surprised to see the high cell counts for Fort Pierce, being that it has such an exchange of water with the tide changes. That's surprising me.
Yeah, so actually the Pseudonychia is something that's also found in pretty high cell concentrations in the coastal ocean outside the lagoon. So some of that may be coming in from the ocean where it finds higher nutrient concentrations and then really starts to grow in those areas near the inlets.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
So we're not doing heterotrophic bacteria, no. We are monitoring picoplanktonic photosynthetic bacteria, which would include things like the microcystis, the blue-green algae, but we're not doing heterotrophic bacteria, no.
It's interesting, the spike between January and April of 2019, is there a correlation there? It seems like it spikes and then it goes back down.
Yeah, there's a lot of variation in the data. You're talking about in the
cell counts, January,
or
it
the
looks
total?
like January, and it really spiked.
Yeah.
And then by, June and
Yeah.
October.
So the system is very dynamic. There are changes that can happen very quickly, and pretty dramatic changes, and that's why we need to monitor pretty regularly. Otherwise, we might miss these significant events. And it's in response to a lot of factors, and figuring out what is driving those rapid dynamics is really a challenge. And we need to, so we've got about a year's worth of data at this point, and we need to really continue that to really get a better understanding of the system, have enough data to do the statistical modeling to do that.
Thank you. Commissioner.
Just briefly, what do you think, even if you don't have a firm answer, but what do you think, based on what you've seen, the biggest couple factors are that influence the cell counts?
Well, probably nutrient inputs. Nutrient concentrations in the water really drive the growth. These are basically plants. They need nitrogen, they need phosphorus, they need fertilizer, just like land plants do, and they need sunlight. So when we have long days and we have high nutrient inputs that come in with freshwater discharge usually, that's when you'll see the highest biomass, and that's when you can really get these organisms to bloom out of control into very high cell concentration levels.
How about temperature? Do you think there's a big correlation there, or is it something that you've just not seen?
Temperature's a factor, but the temperature variation is probably less of a driving force in this system. I would guess it's not huge, and a lot of these organisms can grow over a wide range of temperatures. They can also grow over a wide range of salinities as well. So I think it's mainly nutrient inputs and sunlight availability, day length, that are driving a lot of the dynamics. But again, it's very complicated. I don't want to oversimplify it, but those are major factors. Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else?
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
2 quick points. Thanks to your recognition as council of the importance of tracking harmful algal blooms, these 2 contracts with Harbor Branch and University of Florida are now under recurring contract with us. So it's not a 1-year and done, and that's important. And the other thing I want to do, just for the record, is to thank our friends at EPA. This fiscal year, we have a $25,000 supplemental grant that we'll be working with St. John's on harmful algal blooms. That's in addition to our base $600,000 funding. So I want to let you know that little extra money really goes a long way to help us in this effort. So thank you.
Thank you.
Looks like trouble coming up. Hey, Matt.
So, good morning. My name is Matt Culver. I'm with the Brevard County Natural Resources Management Department. And I'm going to talk to you about a project in 2 parts. It's a little different than the others. This is a project funding, land acquisition project that's been made possible through the support of the NEP's professional grant writing services. So the county would not have been able to acquire these parcels that I'm going to go over here without the assistance of your professional grant writing services. So this is Griffith's Landing at Blue Crab Cove. It's land acquisition for a working waterfront site, the last one in Brevard County. It's in central Brevard County, right on Highway 520 in Merritt, off of Merritt Island. This is the site prior to acquisition. It was slated, you can see the condos right there next to it. So this site was slated to become condos just like its neighbors, basically. And the opportunity arose where we could look to acquire it. So we looked we actually was the Stan Mayfield Working Waterfronts Grant Program, the first time we worked on this. It was in 2009. So we were able, again, through the grant writing services of the NEP, able to put an application in and get funding to acquire this site. We were funded through that grant, through Stan Mayfield, for $1.84 million. And with that, we were able to leverage the remaining grant funding through the Florida Inland Navigation District and through the local CRA that's in that area. So and 0 general funds through the county, which is always a good thing if we can make that happen. So with that, we were able to acquire what is Mrs. Apple's Crab Shack, which is a wholesale seafood market. There's one actually here, this same grant cycle. There was one in Sebastian that actually won the award that year also. And Doc's Bait House. So this is a wholesale seafood market and a retail bait house. So with that, so the importance of these is this is the last remaining public access, commercial public access on the Intercoastal Waterway in Brevard County. So there are other wholesale seafood markets, but nothing on the river itself. And another thing is there are over 250 commercial licenses in the area, with over 200 inland farther, if you're looking towards Orlando, that come to this area that could use this site so actually it's over 450 cumulatively commercial licensed fishermen that could use this site, which is a big economic driver, obviously, for the area. So another reason why we went after this. The acquisition prevented private development and loss of public access to the site, relieve pressures on other ramps for those commercial uses. So the emphasis here is we tried to make this development more available for the commercial fishermen. Increased access also by recreational boaters and just recreational users. I'll show you in a minute some of the improvements we did along the shoreline at this site. It connects to a local park, and it created educational opportunities in this area. A big part of this is our educational features, signage, and trying to let people know what's going on, not just with the crabbers in the area and the fishermen, but also just the environment of the whole region. So if you could take 1 second to look at that photo that's up now, this is what it looked like in 2010 when we acquired the site. If you look at the waterfront, and it was the 2 businesses with an open area, and this is what it looks like now. So we put in stormwater features, a whole bunch of, it's more of a working waterfront. It has a lot of finger piers there, upgraded boat ramp, parking, stormwater, public restrooms, and it's become a lot more accessible for the general public, a lot more people coming into it. And with that, we've been able, this is the first site in the county, once we got to this point, where the local oyster restoration started. When Brevard County started its oyster restoration projects in partnership with the zoo, we used this site first. There's been boating education programs there through the U.S. Coast Guard, and also kids sailing courses. So there's been a lot of community events happening at this area. And again, so this was part of the first acquisition, and so what we just worked with through your support again for phase 2. So we're looking to expand this project. We were just actually awarded a $1.46 million land acquisition grant, again through the Stan Mayfield Working Waterfronts program, to expand this, to buy a neighboring property with zero match from the county. And I'll show you, so this is what we're currently working on. The red box is what we have in that first phase. The yellow box is what we're currently is in the land acquisition process right now. A maritime education facility is going to be part of this new piece, and also expanding the aquaculture and the oyster restoration programs. There's actually an additional building on this site which will allow us to house some of those efforts, which are now part of the Save Our Indian River Lagoon program, and also additional parking and storage areas for equipment, again, for crabbers if possible. Every couple of years there's a crab removal time of year when crabbers have to remove their traps from the waterway because of trap cleanup, so we'll allow them to store their traps on the site and use it, as they need to. So you can see what we're working on here, and again, these projects and the $3.3 million in land acquisition funding awarded through Stan Mayfield particularly is with it was a success because of the help of the NEP's grant writing projects. And again, these grant applications are like folders about this big, so that's why we needed the additional assistance to pull this together. Any questions?
Impressive. Council? Yeah, Commissioner.
First, the image on the bottom right there, I did insist that they not do a statue of me, but they put that one up there anyway. I don't see the likeness, but a lot of people think that it's spot on. No, I also want to give a shout out to the Merritt Island Redevelopment Agency that put in, I think you had the number 385,000 into it out of the TIF. So this was a great project where we had the CRA work with natural resources in the county side to get our SORL funds, our half-cent sales tax funds, basically, and tie everything together. This was a really great setup for everyone that was involved, and I can tell you the constituents that are around that area, and that's solidly in the smack dab middle of my district, everyone really likes what they've done there. They took an area that essentially was going to be developed and turned into basically an eyesore, or just a continuation of what was already starting, and they not only kept it in the state that it was at, but improved it substantially. So it was a win for everyone.
I had the opportunity to visit this site many years ago when it was first acquired through the Stan Mayfield grant program, which is a great grant program if you guys aren't familiar with it, and we do have a site here in Sebastian. I love what you've done with it, and Miss Apples is wonderful too, as a side note. And seeing this second phase going in, I think that's really going to expand what that working waterfront grant is for, and I commend you guys for preserving that and adding all the amenities you have. It looks great.
Thank you very much. Anything else?
This is like a template of how to do things right. This is really amazing, to the point that I'll probably be contacting you, get some Volusia County folks down here. There's a parcel that I think we could probably use your expertise in. We'll do a field trip if that's okay with you.
Sure thing. Feel free to give me a call.
That's great. Thank you. Council, anything else?
Madam Chair?
Great work.
I'm going to use this opportunity to do a pitch, if you don't mind.
Please.
Each year, we appropriate a certain amount of money in our budget for technical support, which we've focused on this grant writing support. I don't think any year, we've never expended that full budget line item. This is a good example, and it's not the only example, but we invested about $6,000 in that technical support. They received over $1 million. We understand it was St. Lucie County? St.
Return on
Lucie County, just
yeah.
in the last week, received about $1 million grant on a similar investment from us. And I know Commissioner Lober and I went and spoke to one of our cities in Brevard County, trying to encourage, our cities and our partners to take advantage of this opportunity. It's super easy. They call, our office. If the project aligns in any way with the CCMP goals and objectives, we handle the contract, we pay the contractors who are under contract with us, and we hand those grant writers over to our partners. We have 3 under contract. I think they're 3 for 3. Yeah, 3 for 3, so we're batting 1,000 right at the moment. But I would like to see that money not carry forward and get fully expended every year, because it's available, it's easy, and it's a quick turnaround. So talk to your cities, your partners. We're here to help. And I had a few people say, well, why Brevard County? With the half-cent sales tax, and Matt mentioned it. It's hard to write these grants. We have professionals that knock these out in short order because that's what they do. And so I just wanted to let everybody know who's listening, if you're in a municipality or a nonprofit, you're doing Indian River Lagoon work, if you need support on grant writing, call us. We're here to help. And this is first come, first serve. So if we get into the first quarter and that line item is exhausted, that's it for the year. Thank you. Well, I thought somebody was calling already.
So you get the crowd.
Thank you. This is an amazing project. Thank you. $6,000 investment for $1 million grant appropriation.
Right, and I would add just a rapid turnaround. So, for example, our last grant, the DEP calls me and said, you guys don't want to expand your project like 3 weeks before the application was due. So we were able to jump right into their services, and they quickly got it set up so we could make it happen.
I don't know any place else that's got a return on investment like that anywhere.
Can you manage my portfolio?
Yeah.
Further
Yeah,
turnaround.
I will gladly invest wherever you're putting that one. I'm all in. Okay, Council, anything else? This is just really, really great work. Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, Matt.
Look forward to seeing your success, continued success. Here we go. This one is Sebastian, septic to sewer. Is yours short and sweet too, or?
Absolutely.
No, I'm being facetious.
I don't read
You're
every
good.
word. No. So I'm Lisa Frazier, Community Development Director and CRA Manager for the City of Sebastian. Thank you for letting me present this to you today. The city actually started this program, this incentive program, about 5 years ago. It targets the properties within our CRA, which travel along US 1 and the Lagoon. To date, we're estimating about 129 properties that still require conversion. The Indian River Lagoon Council became our partners in 2017. Over that 2-year period, we were able to remove 22 tanks. During that 2-year period, we also recognized some issues and opportunities. One of the issues is that for these properties, and if you're familiar with CRAs and redevelopment areas, a lot of the properties are small. In order to connect to the county's sewer system, they have to connect to a high pressurized force main along Indian River Drive or near the railroad tracks. It can be cost prohibitive for these individual lot owners to have to put in lift stations. It can exceed about $15,000 each. The opportunity that came along was that the county was able to provide a gravitational line in our north CRA area, which is a lot less expensive, generally about $5,000 or less to connect. So with these thoughts, our city council changed the parameters of our grant to better extend the dollars throughout the CRA and to make sure this project continues to be successful. We provide 75% of the cost, capping those that connect to forest mains at about 10,000 and those connecting to the gravitational lines at around 5,000. These applications need to be approved by our CRA board prior to work being conducted, and then this is a reimbursement grant. So they need to prove that the work has been completed and is connected. They are now connected to the county prior to reimbursement. I'm giving a little plug because I need people to understand that the property owners themselves. We also added 2 scientific parameters to our reporting back to you all. One being location of the septic systems or the septic tanks being removed to the water body, the lagoon at this point, and also adding the UF study, 2011 UF study, which showed a formula that measures the amount of nitrogen removed or utilized per person per day, and we've encapsulated that formula in order to give you our nitrogen reduction or an estimated nitrogen reduction by this septic removal. The Indian River Lagoon Council once again funded us in 2019. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. We have expanded our notification abilities, if you will. Thank you to the county. They have our grant as part of their website for the North County Outreach Program, and we've sent out postcards notifying all the eligible property owners. And I am pleased to announce that to date, and this only started in October, this new grant, I should say, we have 4 approved applicants and 2 pending within 1 month. So we're very excited about this program becoming even better in this next year. And that's it. Any questions?
And just one question. I've
Yes,
heard within was your CRA district, did it come just for this project, septic to sewer, or was that already in place, your district, CRA district already in place?
Our CRA district has been in place since 1995. Is that your question?
Yes. Okay. Okay.
But you funded us once before in 2017, and then you funded us again. And you also funded our oyster gardening project, which was a huge success at our working waterfront.
Right.
And it was a big educational program that you helped us kick off, and we're still moving forward with it.
Can you go back to the formula, the
Yes, ma'am.
box that you had on the,
Yes.
the
Hold on. I need to put my eyes
the
on.
nutrient?
Previous.
I think it was 1 or 2 before.
There you go.
There you go.
Yes.
On the nutrient reduction,
Yes,
on
ma'am.
that formula, that's from University of Florida?
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
This is a generic formula, correct? So
Correct.
this formula applies anywhere, whether I'm going to do it in the North Penn up in Ormond, or is that a fair statement? Or are there different formulas based on density and?
Do you want me to? I'll just answer mine, and then of course you jump in with your expertise. But and oftentimes, and I've been successful in getting the 319 grant, in fact, for Merritt Island, and they generally utilize a Step L program, which goes around these parameters, identifying, the usage of nitrogen expenditures, and then what the reduction would be per property or per household. This study was specifically towards homes, as you'll see, residential, and in our CRA we do have homes and we have commercial. So how did we equate it to commercial? We determined that we would utilize the ERU basis, formulaic basis that the county utilizes, and we felt that that was kind of close to showing the reality. Does that make sense?
It does, but I guess my question is this a generic formula that can be applied anywhere, or were these ratios and parameters developed for this particular site?
No, this is wouldn't call it a generic, but this is one study that is quantified. But one of the challenges is, it's kind of averaging. And when you average, you always have this variability and inherent error. Brevard County, through the Save Our Indian River Lagoon program, is doing some very definitive nitrogen loading work right now, and also phosphorus as part of some of their work. And so I think what we're going to see over time is these numbers, we're going to wind up working through ranges, because the challenge is, not all loads are the same.
Correct.
Not all family sizes are the same. Not all groundwater types, the height of the groundwater, the distance from the drain field to that groundwater, how the drain field was constructed, and most important is the soil type. And so this delivery system has inherent variability from property to property, even properties that may be side by side. So it's a generic accepted formula. It's been vetted, in scientific peer review, but it's still an estimate.
Thank you.
One more quick question.
Yes.
Is that all right? So just looking at the little graphic on the top right, where it has the info with respect to the distance from the lagoon for the tank removed. If you know, how did they come up with the numbers for that? Because it just seems to be kind of a very specific set of ranges. So less than 400, then 400 to 700, and so on. From what I've seen, at least in Brevard, when we look at it, we have it kind of defined a little more narrowly than that. And I didn't know if there was some template that it was based on, or what it might be.
We based it on our zoning, if you will, our land use at this point. And 400 feet's about the closest distance.
Perfect. Makes sense. Thanks.
Very good. Any other comments, Council? Yes, sir.
Before we close out, I just want to say how much I've appreciated hearing these presentations and these quick hitters like this, and me being able to get looped in on them. And I want to thank everyone that was involved in presenting and putting this segment together. I really liked it.
And we're not done yet. Wait, there's more.
Oh, I thought they were the last time. Oh, Wesley's Island. Wesley's Island's coming up.
Thank you all very much.
Yeah. I thought we bumped that one.
You got me. You got me.
Save the best for last, right?
Am I red?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, Mike Middlebrook. The best for last, Wesley's Island. This is the Assistant Director for St. Lucie County Environmental Resources Department, and Wesley's Island has been a project that we're proud of. It's award-winning, as Commissioner Zadowski mentioned earlier, and the NEP was a big supporter in the beginning of this project. So without further ado, Wesley's Island is a 7-acre island in the Port of Fort Pierce, right between the two causeways. It's adjacent to downtown Fort Pierce and the Fort Pierce Inlet. It's in the view shed virtually of all of Fort Pierce. It's right adjacent to the Museum Point Smithsonian Aquarium. And in the past, it was heavily dominated by invasive species. It wasn't actively managed until the county jumped in and worked with some volunteer effort, and we actually started leasing the island from the state. It's a big habitat restoration project, always evolving, always adapting, but the biggest thing about this project, the take-home message, is we're trying to make it a living outdoor classroom for the IRL. So ecotourism, we have tons of birds on this island. It is a bird conservation island. And 2016 to current, we've raised about and cobbled together about $175,000. And I mentioned the NEP support was the $15,000 actually got us started. So we've had over 257 volunteers. We've had about 1,500 hours of work out there by our volunteers, equating to about $36,000 worth of in-kind labor. We could easily name this St. Lucie's Volunteer Island because it has been out, and they have been out in force and lots of community support. So we mentioned the outreach partnerships is really want to make this the outdoor classroom environment. It's so close to the Smithsonian Aquarium in St. Lucie County. So we've been doing a lot of alternative spring breaks out here. And then season after season, we've been working with Stella Maris, and I know they've really received some funding from the NEP as well. So they've been out there at the island 3 summers in a row, and we've seen about 98 students that have done a marine sea camp project out there on the island, and it is their outdoor classroom. So as Ashley always likes to say, 98 future conservationists have been to the island. So I mentioned the $15,000 got us started. It replanted over 10,000 plants, native plants on the island, and helped us clear the exotic species from the island and prep for that planting. And then the focus for phase 2, we recently received a license plate grant for $35,000 to help reestablish canopy and nesting structures on the island, but also an outdoor classroom. This is the project area back before 2015. Now it's 2016 there with the NEP support. This is before we started clearing the area. That's all exotic species removed from the island. That was the $15,000 from NEP. And this is a before and after when we removed the Australian pines. You can see all the native species still persisting after we got the Australians out of there. It's a top-down view of after we cleared the area, and you note the elevation on the island. We used that for our planting plan and used it to establish 7 natural communities on the island. So we hope to continue to educate about the natural communities on the island as we go forward. Just a little photo montage of some of the project in action. These are befores, afters, and during the project. We had a lot of help from the Aquatic Preserve folks bringing out plants to the island, our department, and then a lot of stakeholders from the region. And this is fast forward till today. All those plants are established and they're doing really well. And then we started a phase 2 this year, which I'll talk about in a second. But this has been a media sensation. Kathy Hill always reminds me that on the NEP page, when we did this video on YouTube, it was one of the most liked and had the most hits on the NEP page. And we were recently showcased on Protecting Paradise out of West Palm Beach on the Channel 5 news. Fast forward to this year, we started reestablishing the canopy. That took a barge, a crane, and lots of effort to bring out the larger trees to the island, and they have been doing great with all the rains this year. We're getting there and getting there. We also had nesting structures we brought out with this phase. 3 actually, 2 for blue heron nesting and then 1 for an osprey. And we partnered with Audubon, the St. Lucie Audubon group here in our area, and they actually won the state award for best restoration project for the Audubon assembly that occurred last week actually. And then I mentioned the outdoor classroom. That was another phase of the phase 2, and it was kind of our beta test, so we kind of went minimalistic on it, but we hope to bring the Stella Maris group out there and more sea camps. And we also planted the whole area around the classroom for future shade, so we have a lot of cabbage palms around that. And we've been really proud to partner with the Treasure Coast SISMA group. They're a cooperative invasive species group. They've been bringing out land managers from all over the region in South Florida to help us maintain for exotics out there in the planting areas. And we're actually hosting another work day in January. So we'd love to have the council out if you guys want to come out and roll up your sleeves a little bit. And then if you didn't know, Wesley's Island was #1 as the best secret islands in Florida by Coastal Living this year, or last year, and sorry Palm Beach County, we beat out Peanut Island there. But it's a magnificent location. It's right in the heart of the IRL, right in the downtown Fort Pierce. If you think of the IRL in our community, you see Wesley's Island. So if you haven't been out there, we hope that you come out and join us on a work day or a visit. And I know the council staff and the EPA came out to the island yesterday, and I heard it was a great trip. So thank you. I will leave it open for question and answer.
Very good. Council?
I love seeing the photos of the community and most importantly the children out there and having this opportunity to connect them to the environment on projects like this is super important. So I want to thank you guys for implementing that connection to our young folks.
Absolutely, and that Stella Maris group that you all funded, I mean, they do scholarships for underprivileged youth. So, I mean, a lot of the kids that are coming out to the island, you know, they're getting passionate about the IRL, and that's the way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I may.
Yes, sir.
This project isn't without tears and pain. You know, we took a lot of heat when we went in there and took out all the Australian pines and all the invasives because the locals found it as their little hideaway. I mean, we had to stand up to it politically, and from ERD's standpoint, they were getting phone calls, what are you doing? We steadfast, and the volunteers started coming in and checking things out and really being part about it, telling the story. And this is what we're doing today. We're telling the story. And, you know, after we did the first restoration, it started to come back. Now, a year later, now people are really into it. Now the children are coming there for the education components. Even Chop Ledge, who runs a tour boat, 35 passengers per day. That's a stop for him to check things out. But what's important is when Wesley's was what it was with all the invasives, we had trash, we had beer. I mean, it was never taken care of by the public. And since then, I think yesterday when we were out there, maybe one piece of trash is what we found but they are really taking care of it, and now it's like the center of attention. And that little classroom area, there's already been a impromptu wedding there. It's not what we built it for, but there was a wedding there. So it is a great opportunity, and we also have Jim Oppenborn, who does the artificial reef programs in the county, looking to create a snorkeling tour around it. So adding all that in together is really making it a centerpiece. And again, I said it before, without EPA's umbrella, each of our funding partners, all the volunteers, and even guys like I call him Mike Midas Middlebrook, because he finds money like nobody's business. But at the end of the day, it's about making all these things happen. And the biggest and best part of this thing is all of those children that you see here, they're going to be finding new ways, new technologies, new efforts to change what we're doing, what we have done in the past, and fix the problems and make us an even better quality of life in our communities. So, and I just want to thank Mike and ERD for all their efforts, and they do a great job. And I should say too that MMPS, Mark Music and his group is the adopter of the island, who's participated with a lot of the volunteers, and Jim Oppenborn was also early on in this thing. When we saw the value of this thing, we got a lot more interest with our departments, and then finding more money. That was the key. So again, without these funding partners, we couldn't do it, and it's a big deal. So thank you.
Wow, another amazing project. Anybody else, Council?
Thank you.
Wow, thank you. So this was really good. Aaron, this is. You're always on the cutting edge. That's good. Seriously, this was so good. Maybe instead of doing it all at once, maybe every meeting, if we want to highlight a couple. I mean, I would like to see, I don't know about you, but instead of reading grants and outcomes and the numbers on the printed paper, this tells the story better than anything else that we can do.
And we'll be happy to bring, one of these, as we move forward. Now we're finally into this fourth year. We actually have projects coming to completion. And what you just saw is only a quarter of the projects that we had under contract last year. And so, we'll do that. We'll kind of invite somebody in, and we'll just, and if you remember, we used to use this last meeting of the year kind of more for awards. And I don't think anybody, when I talked to each of you, you felt like that maybe there was a more productive way to use that last meeting. So if you think this is it, we'll do this again next year, kind of with the speed round. But if you have other ideas, let us know as we schedule next year. But we'll make sure that each meeting you get to see at least a project or two.
Great. That's great work from everybody. And I'm glad that we've got all the PowerPoints on record too, because that helps tell the rest of the story when we want to go back and reference them. So thank you for that. Okay, management conference reports. Bob, is he here? There he is. Of course he's here. Good morning.
You did a good job with what I gave you.
Now we're back on track.
We are. Back to the speed dating. Good morning. My name is Bob Yulovich. I have the honor of being the chair of the management board. We met Tuesday, as always, as a dynamic group, a lot of intellectual energy in there. I'm humbled to serve. The meetings never get old. I've been doing this stuff for almost 50 years. And the excitement and the energy in there is compliments to the staff. They basically give me the script. And Kathy Love Martinez on this side and Kathy Hill's on this side, and I stay on script. We had several presentations on Boater's Guide, the monitoring plan, habitat restoration. We had an interesting side discussion on that, on how to accommodate innovative technologies into that. State of the Lagoon Tech Report. That was very interesting. That was identifying stressors, causes and effects. And Laura Lee Thompson, who many of you know her background with the Dixie Crossroads and commercial fishing, brought up an interesting comment about commercial landings and using that data as a stress indicator as what's happening out there. And then we also talked about asset mapping. We had a great presentation, a science presentation on mercury sources, cycling, and bioaccumulations, and to me it was kind of like a myth buster with all the data. It was exceptional. Finance Committee met. They reviewed and endorsed the budget resolutions that are on your packet under Agenda 12D, Resolution 2019-08, 2019-09, and subsequently the Management Board approved those unanimously. Also in relative to your agenda on 12B, the IRL Environmental-thon, the Management Board approved that unanimously. On other matters, we talked about the success of grant writing, as Dwayne's repeatedly alluded to this morning. Kathy LaMartina suggested, and the group endorsed an informational flyer to get it out, to talk about the different branches that we have capability in doing grant writing. And then in conclusion, we talked about the continuous and potentially expanding diversified role of the CCMP to all stakeholders. That's it, Madam Chair. How'd that do for speed dating?
It's really good. Thank you.
Any questions? We good?
Council?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Dr. Jacoby, I believe you're up next.
Good afternoon. Still good morning. So we likewise discussed the various plans that are being prepared and what our role would be in terms of having input to these, and we will get quarterly reports and have the brain trust, as it were, try to add to the value of those. We likewise put forward the various things that we were asked for resolutions for your approval. We approved those. But I want to use a few minutes here to give you the very, very nutshell version of some of the information that we heard about mercury. So this exercise, as it were, grew out of a joint funding agreement that we had with the St. John's District had with the USGS back when we were doing the algal blooms investigation. From there, we interacted with a variety of USGS folks and their tools and their expertise and their experience. And eventually, one of the people that was suggested was David Krappenhoft, who is a world-renowned expert on mercury. And so we had him come and give a seminar. We talked with him a little bit about the Indian River Lagoon, and he was interested in coming here to try to apply some of his expertise. So a group of people got together. He came on his own dime, but we provided samples from the variety of people you see on the screen here who had archive samples of various things, from sediment from John Treffry to dolphin tissue and so forth. So he came and took some water samples because there's a technique to this. It's meticulous. Mercury is something that you look for in very small quantities, and if you don't have good technique, your samples are contaminated and you get no solid information. So anyway, so they spent a few days here doing sampling. And let me give you the nutshell version. So David Krappenhoft's been working on this for 30-something years, and within the last 5 to 7, he said everything he thought he knew about mercury's been turned on its head. So this is kind of the original mercury story that people have heard in the past, perhaps. You have emissions, and that is the biggest source of mercury, particularly coal burning. The concept was that this all went up into the troposphere, the high atmosphere, and it was a global mishmash of mercury from all different sources. And that wet deposition, rainfall, brought it down, and particularly into the waterways as a direct input. And then it made its way to the sediment, and the mercury that's of real interest is what's called methylmercury. Other mercury forms do not have the same effect. Methylmercury is the one that gives you the neurological effects. So you may have heard of the Minamata and the cats. That was one of the first places where they noticed the neurological effect of mercury. The cats were stumbling around. Same sort of thing happens in humans. So it's methylmercury we're worried about. The concept was that there was only one clade, one group of bacteria that would be able to methylate the mercury, and those are found in sort of anoxic sediments in water bodies, the sulfate reducers. They made the methylmercury. That was picked up by the biota, and mercury is expelled from various animals, including us, people, but at a much slower rate than you can ingest it. So its half-life in the body is like 65 days, which means if you didn't take in any more mercury, it'd take you 215 or so days to lose 90% of it. So what tends to happen is it accumulates in things that eat other things. And that's kind of the old story, and a lot of that turns out to be not quite true. So for example, it's not a global mishmash. The deposition of mercury, dry deposition rather than wet deposition, can be really important, which means it doesn't often travel as far as people thought it traveled. So your local sources may be having a much bigger effect than you might have imagined. It's not only the sulfate reducers that can methylate mercury. They're finding more and more bacteria that have the gene that allow them to methylate mercury if they get in the right situation. So that means it's not only going to be a bioaccumulation sediment. And so what's added here on this slide is like local sources. So local inputs may have a very big effect. And the most interesting thing perhaps about what's been going on is that there's now a way to try to parse out those sources. So you can take samples of them from the environment and parse out where the mercury that you're finding has come from. And you do that with what are called stable isotopes. I won't go into all of that today, but mercury has, I think it's 6 they use, stable isotopes. And what you can do is look at the ratios of those various isotopes, which is tried to represent in this graph here. And if you get more of a certain one, for example, the higher you go on the delta 199, the vertical axis, that means that this mercury has been exposed in the atmosphere to the sunlight. And then as you look here, you can see that certain other sources, if you have low 202, that's deposition to terrestrial or industrial sources. And so they can parse out the sources. And that's really what Dr. Kramenhoff was here to do, was to look at these samples and try to parse out sources. What he found was, and what he expected to some extent, but certainly we talked about it, is because of the length of the lagoon and the diversity of things that go on, the samples that he got were much more variable than he was used to from some of his smaller scale studies. So this just shows you the fact that this is filtered water, mercury and filtered water, and so you can see how much there is, and if you look, Turnbull Creek had a higher mercury content. Wow. Now, the good news is that the mercury content he found overall anywhere, including in the fish, which I'll talk about in a minute, is all really not an issue, right? It's there, it's something you want to know about, but it's not a major issue. But the curious thing here was, as you moved down, and when you got down to around Goat Creek, which is the IRL I-27, that other bar that's a little bit higher, there's some other source there, probably. So the mercury that's up in the northern part, using those isotopes, turned out to be mostly atmospheric deposition. And you might expect that because the watersheds up in that part of the world hasn't been expanded by the canals. You don't have canals going way inland, pulling water from inland. And so a lot of the direct deposition is where you're going to get your mercury. The methyl mercury, as you can see, is a relatively small part. That's the light blue on the top of the bar, which means that's the active part. So there's mercury there, but it's not active. That's why you don't have a major issue. So the fish data parallel the fish data that the Fish and Wildlife Commission's been collecting for years, decades. As you move up the food web, as you move up and deal with things that eat other things, like snook and sea trout, they get more mercury because the food that they eat has mercury, and then they take that mercury and incorporate it into their bodies. But as you can see here, for the EPA criteria in that little dotted orange line, sea trout, okay, that's a little bit high, which means you don't want to have sea trout 3 meals a day, every day, forever. That's probably not the best plan. But sea trout, weekly, not a problem, that kind of thing. Now, the other thing they found when they looked at the dolphin tissue is that the mercury concentrations in the dolphin tissue is, as expected, high, but it's sort of at the level where you wonder how the dolphin can function, because neurologically they should be impaired. So there's some mechanism that these animals have evolved over their exposure to mercury, because they were always going to be the animals that would get the most mercury. They're right at the top of the food web, eating predatory fish. Something that allows them to survive, to protect themselves from the effects of mercury. And one of the things that's been put forward is selenium. So they think that they take up selenium from the environment, and that somehow dampens out the effect of the methylmercury. So again, most of this stuff is preliminary, as he found out that he had a lot more that he had to think about, and he'll be coming back to us to talk some more about where we go from here. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Counselor?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes.
David's presentation was outstanding, and it's one of those ones if you want to start a queue on things that you want to talk in greater detail. I would highly recommend it for a layperson like me who doesn't know a little bit about the island isotope. It was off the chart outstanding. I just wanted to, I'm glad Chuck expanded a little bit on my brevity.
So, thank you. So, Dr. Jacoby, going back to Turnbull, what's so unique about that? Why do you think that is?
So wetlands in general, Turnbull, there's a lot of wetland area up there, undisturbed wetland, and wetlands in general will have mercury in the water. And one of the key reasons for that is because out of those wetlands comes that dissolved organic matter, the tannins, the color.
Right.
And that takes mercury with it and keeps it in solution. And it doesn't precipitate out. So almost all wetlands will have higher mercury in their water coming out of it. So.
Yeah, okay. Well, that was an interesting report.
So, Madam Chair,
Yes,
if I
sir.
might, we helped fund to get this individual down again. We are probably going to engage at some level, but there's a couple considerations after this presentation that at some point we'll be coming back to you with some recommendations. And as you all remember, we are the manager of the only wet-dry deposition atmospheric site, which is at Sebastian. We have been having this discussion, internally about is one site enough? And then now the question is, should we be actually looking at mercury because we do have that unique wet-dry deposition site? And when we posed this question, the answer was, yeah, maybe you should. There's going to be a global accord, the Minamata Accord, in a couple years. And so what was something I didn't actually realize is that the United States has led the world in mercury reductions, largely because of what you all have done with EPA. I mean, 90% of the reductions, I think David mentioned, were all of us. But we're still seeing atmospheric deposition from the rest of the world. And so the question we might have from that management sense is, where do we stand right now with current? Because mercury is an element. If it could have gone in 80 years ago, that one southern site could be a residual from something that went on 80 years ago. So we're going to come back to you at some point this fiscal year, looking at 2021, with some recommendations. We're just not sure how far we go. This is a complicated methodology, which, to be honest, is way over my head. Other than this one lab up in the Great Lakes is one of the only labs in the United States that has the capacity to do this kind of analysis. So there were some really interesting management implications by having this scientist here. And the last thing is it shows why science is important. We've been studying mercury in the United States for, 50 years now? There's still things we don't understand. So when you think about how nitrogen and phosphorus and all of these emerging contaminants, even, Bob's comments to you earlier, there's a lot we still don't know about how these systems interact functionally with this stuff. So stay tuned. We'll be coming back as we continue this dialogue with the partners.
Very good. Look forward to it. Thank you. Anybody, council, anybody? Okay, thank you. Frank Catino.
I'm going to sub in for Frank today.
Good morning, Frank.
Morning. So the CAC met yesterday in this room. And we had most of the folks that were there were the regular guard. We had a few of the new appointees that you'll be appointing in a few minutes who came also to kind of get their feet wet. And we had our EPA guests in the room. CAC did probably a half-hour, 40-minute question and answer session with the EPA folks and had really good discussion back and forth about that. The most important thing that they did yesterday was go over the small grants RFP that we'll be issuing this fall, probably in a couple of weeks. So the first small grant cycle, you funded 12 projects. One of those was the Stella Maris group that Mike talked about for Wesley's Island. And so there's another RFP that's going to be going out shortly for the small grants, which are the $500 to $5,000. So they went over that proposal. It's good to go, so we'll be releasing that with our other RFPs. And then the other thing they decided was, again, that the entire committee, and I think this is impressive just from a staff person point of view, the entire committee decided that everybody would review all of the small grants when they came in. So they all want to do it. And they'll be vetting those proposals as they come in and choosing which ones they recommend for funding. And that was it. Oh, and one last thing, they also recommended approval, and this will be coming to you in a little bit, for the Indian River Lagoon Envirothon. So for about the last 20 years, that program has operated as a nonprofit, and their board voted, in full disclosure, I'm on that board, but the board voted to dissolve the nonprofit and to become a part of the NEP. So that the nonprofit part of that goes away, the fundraising part of it goes away. Envirothon, which is, for those of you who don't know, Envirothon is the largest competition for high school students. It's an outdoor environmental competition, kind of like Environmental Olympics. So it's an outdoor competition. They engage about 500,000 students every year. And the Indian River Lagoon Envirothon, which is the one that we run, does probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 students every year. We have the capacity to do more, and that was part of the impetus for bringing the program under the NEP, that we can multiply what gets done. And one of the great things about it is having it as a program of the NEP, we'll be able to offer it for free. So when it was a nonprofit, the kids had to pay to participate, and if we have it as part of the NEP, they won't have to pay. So we can make it free, and that we think will expand our capacity as well. So that was their meeting in a nutshell.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Sounds like the CAC had a great meeting yesterday and very productive. Okay, our consent agenda. Council, if you've looked at the consent agenda, we'll entertain a motion of approval.
Move approval.
Second.
Have approval in a second. Any opposition to the motion? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Old business, Dr. DeFries, nothing. New business, we have some appointments. Can we do these as a group, or do we have to do these individually?
I would be happy to make a motion to approve them all as a group. All management conference appointees, I would move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second to nominate and approve all appointments as provided in our materials. Any opposition to the motion? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, IRL Envirothon. Didn't we just hear something? I heard something about this somewhere.
You might recall that. So yeah, we are asking for your approval to adopt the Indian River Lagoon Envirothon as a program of the NEP, and for the reason that I just explained. So the nonprofit is going away, that has been dissolved, and we think that, you know, having it as an engagement project under the NEP is going to allow us to expand it and reach more kids, and, you know, do better engagement throughout throughout the watershed.
Second.
Motion second. Any opposition to the motion? Motion carries unanimously.
Great.
Any
Thank you.
comment?
Madam
Yes.
Chair,
Commissioner.
Commissioner Adams was very quick and very good at getting her motion through the CAC, but I see that I failed to get my appointees on the agenda or for that particular group, Dr. Jerome Gaiman. I'm sure I failed to get it to my aide, but I don't know the process, whether I should do it at the next meeting or can we add it in today?
We can do it now.
Can you? Mm-hmm. I'd like to provide Dr. Jerome Gaiman as my appointee to the CAC.
Is a motion?
Yes.
Second. And a second. Any opposition to the motion? Without opposition?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, very good. So now we've got our motion for the Envirothon. So now we're looking at resolution number 2019-07 on a sunset review.
Yes, Madam Chair. Last month, the board directed me to draft a resolution as part of the sunset review that would continue the interlocal agreement for another 5 years, and that resolution is before you for consideration. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
And we've discussed this at previous meetings and have had these discussions and seen the verbiage. So with that, we'll entertain a motion or discussion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any opposition to the motion? Motion carries unanimously without opposition. Any comment, council, on this before we move on? Okay, budget revision. Here we go, Mr. Clodney. This is some housekeeping, we'll call it that.
Yep. So the first resolution before you is for our final opportunity to amend the 2018-19 budget. And all we're doing is just moving some funds around in administrative expenses between the two categories there, between services and costs. I want to stress this, we were under budget in that entire category. We just want to make sure everything fit within those line items.
So the requested action is a motion that will recommend adoption of Resolution 2019-08, amending the FY 18-19 budget to address minor line item accounting adjustments. And it's the final budget amendment for 18-19
So
pursuant.
Second.
Okay, motion second. Any opposition to the motion? Motion passes unanimously.
So resolution 2019-09 is also small line item accounting budgets. The first one is we're decreasing our expenditures, and this is mostly to account for those other increases in the other line items. There is all coming out of our contingency reserve to increase these other amounts. The first one is for Dwayne's increase that you all approved at the last meeting. We also had in facility expenses, we budgeted some new computers. We did go through a quote procurement of that, and we did choose the lowest one, but it was above that $5,000 that we originally budgeted, so we wanted to increase that amount a little bit. Additionally, we were looking into a 10x10 storage unit. Again, we went through the 3-quote process and chose the smallest one at $99 a month. This will include keeping some old paper files, all sorts of stuff for Envirothon and stuff for the Ireland EP, such as like posters and stuff for events that we go to.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any opposition to the motion? Without opposition, it passes unanimously. And this also includes the increase for our director.
Correct.
Dr. DeFries, that's included in there. So we've taken care of that. Okay, thank you. So now, Dr. DeFries, your report, sir.
Madam Chair, I'm going to be really brief on year-end comments because I'd rather look forward. I want to give both Kayleen and Kathy a round of applause. They've been working really hard. So between now and the holidays, we will have our 2020 calendar. I'm going to give you a little bit of new news on that available to you. So expect, as our tradition, a hand delivery of calendars ready for stuffing stockings during the holiday. But we will have, once again, our annual report. We're anticipating early January. I'm pushing my staff to get that done so it's available for the beginning of the session up in Tallahassee. Unlike last year, this year, Kathy has assembled the projects that some of you are doing within your counties and within your agencies that we didn't fund. So this will be a kind of a shareholder report of not only what we did as a IRL council and all the projects that were pursuant to fiscal year 18-19, but we're going to showcase partner projects within the agencies in the county. So thank you all, because your staff provided in a very timely fashion project summaries. So this will give a really good gauge of, folks who say nothing's going on. How many projects did you wind up looking at? About 175. 175 projects in addition to the projects that we have going in-house. So it's a substantial amount. First and foremost, I want to thank EPA for coming down in for us. It was great having you all. It's always, fun to see our partners, see work on the ground, but because this was a busy week, with all of our meetings, and I wanted to just also thank everybody who helped participate in these field trips. They look easy when you're doing them, but it takes a lot of, planning to make sure everything goes according to plan. And most importantly, in this case, there's a couple of really special thank yous. Number one, for Bob Musser. Bob gave tours of the port as we were taking groups of 3 up in a helicopter at Port Canaveral. So one of our longstanding innovator and investor network members, Mark Granger, who's the president of Florida Air Tours and Cocoa Beach Helicopters, back in 2016, he offered his services and said, I will fly you whenever you need it. This is the first time we've taken advantage of this opportunity because this is a considerable commitment. They could be flying tourists, instead they're flying us. And so, big thanks to him. The weather wasn't too cooperative. We were able to dodge the rain squalls. And so the reports that you actually heard just now on water quality, our NEP guests actually got to see those kind of patchy blooms going on. So we saw the pseudonetia blooms, we saw the Oreo umbra, we saw the clean water, all within a really short 15-minute flight. Within a couple of miles, you could see this difference between clarity and color, and we will continue to be in that flashy condition. But it was really good to talk about it, see it, and then again, see it in the water. And also to Commissioner Zadofsky, his whole team, you guys do great work. We'll try to get everybody out. I'm thinking we should start doing some field trips down the line. We'll need to work with you all on scheduling, but seeing these on the ground is an important thing. So thank you all for participating. Right now, looking ahead, we have 24 new projects, and I want to give Dan a big round of thanks. We have always struggled with some of our partners, and I won't mention whom. It's nobody in the dais here, that take a long time to get through legal review on contracting. We have every single contract executed except for 3, and they are really close. And so for the first time, we are starting a fiscal year, basically on the run. We have 27 additional active projects and projects, so we're managing 51 projects literally as we speak. Internally, part of our CCMP obligation to the EPA is they like to see a support document looking at how do you finance a plan. And, we estimated that we are looking at several billions of dollars to do all of the work. I have already started that draft, and you will get to see that in the first half of the year. I'm hoping to have a first draft to our management conference for review as early as February. And Kathy is working on a multi-year communication plan, and I want to extend this offer to each of the counties and also our agencies. Because Brevard County is so active with their Save Our Indian River Lagoon plan, because there is money committed both at the Space Coast Office of Tourism and within the Save Our Indian River Lagoon plan, Virginia Barker, you've all met. I've been meeting now repeatedly with their TDC and also Virginia to make sure that the monies we spend on communication are not duplicative. And so we're beginning to build what will be a 12-month and longer strategy. So I want to offer that same dialogue with you all in the counties, both with the EDCs, the TDCs, your Natural Resources Department. I think the more we work together, some of the questions are the same lagoon-wide, but if we go down south, so much is focused on Everglades restoration, Lake O. Up in Volusia, it's a different system. And so I'm available to you. Kathy and I will be working to try to make sure that, number one, we're answering those tough questions, but number two, that we've got a communication strategy that isn't just, let's do something next week, but it's got at least a 12-month viewpoint on it and longer. And I see real value in those meetings over the last couple months. You've heard about the monitoring plan, the habitat restoration plan, the technical report, asset mapping. No need to go into those. The voter's guide, all of those have initiated. Each of those contractors gave presentations this week to the management conference. We're not going to bring any of that information back to you all until we start getting to that draft plan standpoint. But I do want to mention one. For the last couple of years, we have been working to meet the intent of EPA to have climate-ready estuaries. And we've had supplemental grants from EPA for two consecutive years. And by the end of this calendar year, I will have our adaptation plan in final form. Staff is going to take what is very technical information, condense it into a community, summary, and then we'll bring that back to you, probably not in the February meeting, but one of the meetings we will come in and tell you what we've learned. I've already told EPA I think ours is the best plan in the nation, and it's only because our contractors took a deep dive. And many of your TPOs are looking at sea level rise now, and so we're going to be working to look at how we build better resilience as we move forward. On the communication side, this is coming up, and I also want to get you some guidance. So the new website has kind of been out there but not fully implemented. We're going to finish that over the course of the next few months, retire the old website and be under the new. Two new things we want to propose and just make sure that you agree this is a good move. We're going to start to do a quarterly newsletter that will be available on the website to you, to all of our partners, on a regular basis. Okay. And that's going to include news, project highlights. We're looking at highlighting projects and videos because it's such a powerful tool. We're not sure how we're going to get there, but we're planning on starting that. And also, Kathy and I, it wasn't over a beer, but it should have been. We're kind of looking at what do we hear on the street? And there's a lot of myths, and people don't understand certain aspects, and some of it's really fun, and some of it is, just misinformation. So we're going to actually use that newsletter to, look at some of those really fun things and some of those challenging stories to try to clear up misinformation. But, we happen to have a clam, which none of you have ever seen, I'm sure. That was one of my favorite invertebrates that actually spits mucus and runs up and down in a tube that a squilla manta has in order to eat. And, we think that's a cool story. And I'll tell you why in a minute, but that's coming out. So are you all good with quarterly newsletter as part of our output? And part of that is I have been remiss as an executive director, and there was a lot of reasons why this last year and a half, but I'm feeling like I'm not communicating with all of you as much as I want to. Some of you I meet on a regular basis or I talk on a regular basis. Some of you engage me, proactively. But in order to kind of standardize this, starting first week of every month, you're going to get a kind of a really short, it may only be a paragraph, what's coming up, what's hot, what may be an event we should all be thinking about as a council and as you as board members. And I'm going to showcase a couple of those upcoming events today, but that way we'll have a formal, I'll proactively connect with you formally. But again, I'm always available at any time, 7 days a week. If you need anything, just call me or email me. I'm always there. 32 vital signs video. We're going to turn what you're going to see here in a minute into a whole suite. So remember the vital signs? We're going to do a video for each one. 30 seconds, if it's stormwater or muck or what's a 21st century community. And so we're going to be reaching to some of our partners to help us with what is the story to tell. That will happen this year as part of our contract with Ideas. We're expanding the audio stories, and you will see a massive, I hope, Kayleen, expansion of social media. We've got some activity, but it hasn't been, fully integrated into our communication strategy. This year it will be. Wanted to give you an update. So we actually took our contract folks at Tetra Tech off the community guide for the CCMP. We're doing that internally and put them back on the project list. We feel like this has got horsepower that needs nurturing. And so this is where we stand right now. We've got 496 projects, all committed to us from our partners. Estimated cost is $2.64 billion. And you can see the estimated phosphorus removed and estimated nitrogen removal projections. We're going to start to look at that list and see what may be shovel ready or near shovel ready, then reach back to those partners, see if that's a priority, and then be talking about, how do we go get funding? So we can serve almost as a minor league ball team to start bringing some of these projects that require PD&E, up to the plate. Many counties aren't as lucky or as active and proactive as Brevard County to have millions of dollars at the table. But as you saw today, we're leveraging with all of you somewhat equally, but we want to make sure we're driving projects, because this is about, what do you remove from the system at the source? And we don't ever want this program to lose that focus. So I guess my question and request to all of you is keep sending projects if you haven't already. A bit of a really exciting announcement. Our calendar is a big hit. We extend 25,000 of those out a year. We've kind of tried to keep those costs to a minimum. I'm happy to announce that our partners at Ron John Surf Shop have come on as our first ever corporate partner for the calendar. They have committed $1,600 to assist with the photo awards, and I'm going to ask for a motion on that. And they're also going to expand printing by 1,000 units, which they will actually use in the store to talk about the Lagoon during the holiday season with their shoppers. And a reminder in this is the back page of the calendar. Kathy, again, has done an amazing job with Kayleen. It looks really good. But this will be the back page, and with a reminder that we have the Beach and Boards Fest coming up with the One Lagoon SUP race, which is basically named after us. So because this money comes to us in donation, and then it becomes public funds, like last year, just to be transparent and totally, consistent with policy, I'm requesting a motion to go ahead and apply that $1,600 to those photographer awards for the calendar.
Motion to authorize.
Excuse me, please. So, Dwayne, you want the motion to, state this is 1,600 in revenue, or you just want us like a?
We book it as revenue, but for us to expend it, now that it's public funds, I'm asking, and we did this last year, just for pure, transparency. Now it's a public fund. We're going to expend that fund. I'm asking for a motion authorizing staff to expend those, to allocate those funds for this purpose.
Okay, so that's what the motion states.
So moved.
So there's a motion. And a second. Any opposition to the motion? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
And I will be sending a letter of thanks to Ron Johns on all of our behalf for that. It's a big one. This is breaking news. I don't have a lot of details yet, but we had heard a couple months ago that the Marine Technology Society, which is an international scientific society and maybe the best in the world for marine technology, was contemplating Florida for one of their tech surges. We immediately put together a team. It was ourselves, Harbor Branch Oceanographic Institution. I got some support from Space Coast Economic Development folks saying that, if you guys can pull this off, we'll help you. And so on April 1 and 2, Harbor Branch will be hosting a Marine Technology Society tech surge focused on water issues, both sensors and also remediation. We're working on the agenda right now. It's a really short timeline, but the focus is to try to get industry to the table with our public partnership. And very thankful Harbor Branch stepped up and really closed this deal because their capacity with their Johnson Education Center to house this austere group. And so we will be seeing scientists from MTS as well as everybody we can get So stand by. We'll be sending out save the dates, announcements, the beginning of the agenda. But I very much want to drive this with private sector support. And so we're excited about that. Any presentations in this conference will actually, they're anticipating will go to peer review publication.
Oh,
so we'll get an outcome from this that's usable. And then just as a preamble, because I don't know what this means yet, other than we're probably going to have a party somewhere, but we are going to be celebrating our 30th anniversary of the NEP in 2020. We're going to celebrate the 5th year, which we've just started, the creation of the IRL Council. I didn't realize it, but we're celebrating the 50th year of the EPA in 2020. And what was the other one? Oh yeah, Earth Day 50, right? So anyway, lots of parties coming up this next year. We'll let you know what all that means. But I'd never, shirk the opportunity for a party. Last meeting, you gave us authorization to start working with the Smithsonian Field Station in Fort Pierce to begin to transition what had been the Indian River Lagoon, species website. So they had a inventory of species that we have been investing in up until recently for almost the last 25 years. We will be driving the boat on that website with the Smithsonian as a full partner in that project. And I wanted to let you know that on February 13th and 14th, at the annual IRL Symposium at Harbor Branch, there will be a whole session on biological diversity to celebrate really what we did as an NEP with partners and others 25 years ago. We had the first biodiversity symposium, I believe it was in the world for an estuary. Every one of those publications, those presentations went to a full publication in the Bulletin of Marine Science. We've been asked, especially us old guard, have been asked to dig back into the archives to kind of see what happened in that 25 years. It's going to be a challenge, but it's going to be a really interesting discussion, and so we'll make sure you are all aware, but I wanted to give you a heads up on the 13th, 14th. Most of this will be on the 13th during the technical session, but this could be a very interesting kind of look back at where we were and where we think we may be today. We'll see what we're going to do with commemorating the 20th, but you will begin to see this partnership emerge in very innovative ways over the course of the year. We're talking to some private sector folks, some artists on this, and so biodiversity, we're going to re-engage ourselves, because that has always been a hallmark of this estuary. And a couple other quick ones. This is happening fast. The Florida legislature appropriated $500,000 to the Florida Ocean Alliance. For the record, just so you all know, I am the co-chair of the Florida Ocean Alliance. That $500,000 is moving towards the development of a statewide ocean and coastal plan. We're working closely in partnership with DEP, FWC, all these state agency partners. Here's a list of the 6 shareholder workshops that are happening over the state as we speak. And I wanted to thank Port Canaveral in particular. On November 20th, they will host one of those workshops. This is open to the public. They're going to be talking about where we think this plan should go. You should know that I have weighed in heavily as a board member that this plan needs to align not only with our CCMP, but the CCMPs of Tampa Bay, Sarasota, Charlotte Harbor, and also the other plans that are out there, like the new Spoil Island plan we're working on with DEP. So this is going to be really a fast track. The legislature gives you money, they want to see a result in 12 months. This is moving quickly with the idea that we would have a draft, in a year. And so I think everybody in this room, anybody who's interested in water issues and ocean issues, fishing, diving, should try to make one of these. And if you can't make it, weigh into Florida Ocean Alliance and tell them what you think is important. This is going to be an important moment for the state of Florida. And then lastly, and probably most importantly, I want to thank you. The last 18 months have been busy. The next 12 months, you can see, we haven't let our feet off the gas on this. So I just want to thank you all. I mean, we've had focused and strategic progress every year. A lot of our next really 30 to 60 days we'll be preparing for the Florida legislative session. I will begin to brief you all by individual emails about bills. Bills are being filed as we speak. Some have been filed already and already in their first committee stops. But I do want to mention what's going on at the federal level because it's important. And so a bill has been filed in the House. I think I shared with you last meeting. It's House Bill 4044. While my guess is we're going to see a continuing resolution, our hope is that some of these bills, especially Everglades funding, kind of move through, some of the roadblocks up in Washington so we can see some of these appropriations moving forward. 4044 has 5 Florida House members who have signed on. I'm going to send you a list. Those House members, by all means, need a big thank you. But we have 27 House members in the state. Gosh, I'd love to see more than 5, at least from Florida. 26 co-sponsors on the bill so far, bipartisan support. But I will keep you apprised. That is our reauthorization. And without reauthorization, it's really hard to get appropriation. So we'll be working through this process, which probably will be longer than a year, but maybe not, because we still need to see a Senate companion, But the fact is, we're in play for reauthorization, and that bill has an appropriation level that almost doubles what our historic appropriation would be. So I'll keep you posted on that. I'm going to send you an email over the weekend to let you know who already has joined as co-sponsors, so you can thank them, when you get a chance. But we're going to have an active legislative session, and I will just keep you all advised as we move through that. And with that, I think that is all I have, Madam Chair. Oh, yeah, we got the really big one. We have more. So do I just hit this button? So this is important. You saw, Bob Musser talk about our partnership. What we did and remember when that happened, their grant to us was when we were in a fish kill and also the worst algal bloom. That was at 2016. And our first thought, because we were pretty young, was, gosh, how are we going to do this? So we sat down with Bob Musser, our team, some of our partners, and we actually made a decision to strategically leverage that $100,000 grant to become supplemental to our entire One Lagoon strategy. And so part of that funding, has moved through this 2-year, 3-year period to this moment, which we're going to debut with you kind of that first, and it's a bit long. It's a 6-minute video. We're going to probably break it in 2 at some point, but this is the foundation for not only where we're going as an organization, but it is also the foundation of how we communicate the CCMP. So with that,
vitality is defined as the power-giving continuance of life present in all living things. Imagine a thriving estuary where rivers mix with the ocean to create a unique and fragile ecosystem, home to over 4,000 species of plants and animals. Now, imagine it covering 40% of Florida's East Coast, touching 6 counties, creating enormous economic impact through high-tech icons like Kennedy Space Center, and drawing millions of tourists, spending over $100 every day they're here. Vitality, clean water, beautiful shorelines, world-class recreational resources, and a high quality of life, all things provided to us by a healthy Indian River lagoon. All estuaries are critical to the Earth's ecosystem. When they're healthy, they're naturally resilient to storms, heavy rains, floods, and wind. But when human-induced stressors and climate change come into play, even small, perfectly natural changes can have big impacts and things begin to unravel. 21 million people. That's Florida's estimated population in 2018, and about 1.5 million of those people call the IRL region home. Looking to the future, the Indian River Lagoon region will grow by 1.5 times the population of Orlando. The truth is, we grew big, we grew fast, and we weren't paying attention. Now, nobody is saying we all have to move away, and there's no single bad guy out there. But here's the thing. What goes in our lagoon usually stays in our lagoon, and that's a combination of things. We need to address discharge of wastewater and septic tanks, stormwater runoff, muck buildup, and high volumes of water coming from Lake Okeechobee for a start. You've seen the headlines and probably experienced it yourself. Fish kills, dead grass, empty oyster beds, brown water. And they come from the interaction of a set of complex causes. Believe it or not, these things all have something great in common. We can do something about them and ensure that the lagoon remains vital, the backbone of our thriving coastal community. There is a plan. The IRL Council was convened in 2015 to lead a clear and effective effort to restore the lagoon under the IRL National Estuary Program. You, your neighbors, local community leaders, and every level of government, every agency, every county, every city, and every person who touches the IRL are the heart of that movement. Now, we're working as one community with one voice because we share one lagoon. Funding for projects that restore water quality, protect and restore critical habitats is part of the job. But the most important work is engaging each other in new ways of thinking about our problems, their potential solutions, and ways to live lagoon-friendly.
We're fortunate to have a body of water that it takes up like a third of the entire coastline of the state of Florida. It involves at least 5 different counties that are, their economies depend on the lagoon. So the problems that they are seeing down in Martin County they're different than the issues that we're seeing up here in the northern end by Titusville. But as a whole, as one community, these 5 counties that are up and down the Indian River Lagoon, we all have to work together so that we can fix the lagoon.
A lot of my special memories here are just going out on the boat with my cousins and having a great time and going fishing, going to the sandbar, but it's a shame that we can't do it anymore because of the rivers.
It's understandable. We've all had moments, anybody that cares about this place have had moments where it sickens us to see what it's become. But at the same time, we have other examples of estuarine restoration around the country. Other national estuary programs have done good jobs at providing the base map to allow their communities and stakeholders to restore estuaries. And it takes time. It takes 10, 15, 20 years. Every estuary is different. We just don't know how long it's going to take, but we have far more to lose by letting it completely slip away than we do to gain by doing so. And it's really important that we stay focused on it no matter how tough it is and how disheartening it is sometimes. The estuary wants to survive. The grass in places where it can't survive, it displays a little bit of resiliency. And if we can just give it what it needs, which is clear, clean water again, the system will recover. It's just a matter of time.
Our lagoon's water quality issues are complex and will take time to repair. But we can work together to make a difference for our kids and grandkids, leading the way to a sustainable future as the world's model for coastal restoration success. Being lagoon friendly is going to mean different things in different communities at different times, but it's worth it and it's doable. These 10 actions are effective and we can start right now. Taking even one of them will make a difference. We're connected by a living body of water, We are one community, one voice, one lagoon.
Wow, really,
So you can see the power of our decision a couple of years ago of bringing the ideas group in with this idea of branding, making sure we have brand alignment. And so everything we do from here on out is going to brand to the CCMP, brand to this baseline message, you know, that this is doable, you know, and it's just about, you know, fixing the problems at hand. And so we will distribute this to each of you along with the finalized, you know, when we're completely typeset on the CCMP, we're going to do a short hard copy print of that when we're ready, which you'll each get a copy, but we're also going to not go overboard on print, and we're going to distribute on a thumb drive. And so this video, which is really heavy right now on you know, we couldn't email it to you because it's got so much memory in it. But we're going to give that to you. We're going to have it on the website, and this is the beginning of that enculturation that we talked about with the ideas group a few meetings ago on this communication strategy. So we're super pleased. Hopefully you are as well. We think they did a great job in capturing who we were, and the way they did the graphics from the CCMP, to be honest, we were shocked. I mean, we watched it, and, you know, I don't know what we were expecting. But as staff, I mean, you know, we were almost standing there in a room together applauding when we saw the draft. So hopefully you feel the same way. So with that, that's all I have.
Wow. Great. That's pretty amazing, Dr. DeFries and staff. That's a great way to end this meeting before we go into council comments. So we will go there. Commissioner Chris, I'll let you start.
Okay. I know we have a short time, so I'm going to try and bring this all together.
You are not on a timer.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
But I practiced all night.
Is that a motion? Is that a motion? There's a motion on the floor.
I thought you were my friend. Wow. Okay. This story actually starts back in the 90s, and St. Lucie County's residents, taxpayers, chose to tax themselves for 20 years for environmentally significant lands. Back then, I don't think the mission was to use those lands as water quality projects, but here we are, fast forward 20 plus years later. Some of the projects I'm going to talk about today are actually intertwined with those lands that had been purchased so many years ago. We're thinking differently in St. Lucie County, as each of you are, I'm sure. And the common thread about today has been about bringing partnerships together, funding sources, and thinking differently. So I think I have a slide. Okay, there it is. DJ Wilcox, that's a IRL water filter refit process. It's going to be completed by the end of the year. It's a $100,000 project, of which $41,000 came from St. Lucie County, $41,000 came from Issues Team, and about $17,000 from FWC. It is a great project, and it adds not only to water quality, but adds to quality of life, which is also important. You've heard me talk about the Paradise Park project, to which the NEP has been a part to help us push us over to the end of this project. It's been a 10-year process. Each of the projects that you see listed after Paradise Park all discharge or are connected to the C-25 canal and the Taylor Creek canal. So we are working on the northern half of St. Lucie County and trying to remove and reduce contaminants that go into these canals, which ultimately end up in the lagoon. So Paradise Park is about an $18 million project completing in this last phase for about $1.7 million. And what's happening there is it's a drainage project, it's a road project, and we also add in half-cent sales tax. So we're getting a different benefit from our half-cent sales tax to actually create roads, drainage, water quality projects, sidewalks, etc. So we're triple activating our half-cent sales tax and getting a much greater benefit from that. You'll see a map after this slide that will bring it all together for you as to how they connect. St. Lucie Plaza is also a drainage project. All of these communities actually have septic. They are old communities built way back when in the 70s, and they're just septic and well. So what we're seeing is these drainage projects, if we have high water events, rain events, the septic was, the leaching fields were not working at that point. So they were just discharging into the canals. So with this drainage project, if there is a rain event, these waters were collected and put into the drainage system where a cleansing cell, detention, retention, and cleansing before it ever gets to the lagoon, if ever. Harmony Heights, it is beginning its first phase, and it too is an old community sitting in between two major canals. That's a $500,000 project. And then Lakewood Park, Lakewood Park I'm gonna say when Matthew came through, had 23 inches of rain in 24 hours. There's no system that could handle that, but we have moved forward with a municipal services boundary unit. The citizens are taxing themselves to help with this drainage project, and that will help, again, reduce any discharges into the Taylor Creek system, which ultimately end up in the lagoon. Our FDEP grant partners, Melville Road. If you can go ahead to the next slide, it'll start to come to better. So when you're looking at this slide, you'll start to see where these parts come together. It's made a little bit smaller than it should be. I probably could have made it bigger. But Melville Road, if you see to the east, hit the button again. It should pop up the names. Did it go? Not so much? Okay, there they go. Okay, so Melville Road, that's $1 million project. It reduces impacts to the North Fork. Again, Commissioner, our friends in Martin County, we are trying very hard to reduce our impacts on you. 10 Mile Creek in the Becker Oxbow. That is an area that is just south of the 10 Mile Creek Reservoir that we finally got online back in 2013. It took a congressional action to remove that from a federal project to the state project, and our friends at the South Florida Water Management District have invested significant monies to make that system work, and now it is actually cleaning a lot of what's coming out of the agricultural section of 10 Mile Creek. And then the Becker project, it is again one of our preserves. There's an oxbow there that has been blocked up for probably several decades. That unblockage, or the removal of the blockage, will actually let the water flow better. It'll actually clean the water through some of the floodplain areas before it ever gets to the North Fork. Again, another section that we're trying to protect our friends to our south. Teague Hammock Natural Storage Preserve. If you see that, it's near the C23, C24 projects that are envisioned for the future. We have begun to use all of our preserves as water projects in some manner, if it can be done. As we wait for SERP and SEP to pick up the pace and the federal government to help us with getting those projects done, again, to help us stop discharging into Martin County through the North Fork, we continue to try and do our best there. This also goes with the McCarty Ranch investment. Port St. Lucie had moved forward with a $10 million purchase of that land. It's about 7,000 acres, I believe, and they are incrementally creating water projects, cleansing cells, to hold water, clean water, and actually use it as a future water source for their, what is predicted to be about 450,000 people in year 2040 or 2045. To the Melville project that you see there, that is a little bit to the east, that is already designed and permits at 90%. We're doing in-house construction. It's a 175-acre neighborhood refit off the North Fork. Again, trying to reduce the impacts of discharges. 9-acre treatment pond is going in there with a projection of 78% reduction in nitrogen, approximately 787 pounds per year, and a 91% reduction in phosphorus reduction at approximately 145 pounds per year. The 10 Mile Creek Becker Oxbow is about a $700,000 project. I talked about it a little bit before. It's designed and permitted and looking for construction in 2020. It restores the floodplain, and the dredging process will remove a bit of muck removal. Again, it increases the floodplain storage, filters nutrients, suspended solids, and muck removal up to 18,000 tons. Teague Hammock, you see there to the west, it's designed and permitted. It's going to be a 300-acre wetland restoration. It's natural storage project, and it helps the IRL south buffer to the C23, C24 south. And if Mike could come up real quick, talking about how we bring things together in partnerships. As part of Port St. Lucie's Crosstown Parkway mitigation, That was a 40-year project to get completed. Mitigation in the amount of about 3.5 million had to occur. Some of that went into our Platts Creek cleansing cell, which is off of the 10 Mile Creek, 5 Mile Creek, which is, again, reducing contaminants coming to our friends in Martin County. But if you see this picture here, you may remember way back probably 5 years ago, the Indian Hills Stormwater Project, which this is part of it, is reducing the stormwater discharges from the Virginia corridor, which has about 3,800 homes. So now, instead of discharging directly into the lagoon, we increased the capacity of this mine over 25,000 acre feet. And now the water that comes in is cleaned and processed and largely never leaves the stormwater park. But we added quality of life to that. You see the different paths that are there. And Mike, do you want to talk about the connection of greenways and trails and how that comes together in our partnership?
Yeah, real quick. I know I'm between you and lunch, so we're working with FDOT on this project. So it's a stormwater park and a recreation area. It also attaches to a Savannah recreation area, which is just to the south of this project. And there's a greenway trail that runs right through it. And we're working with FDOT through their Sun Trail grant program. And we've established nearly $20 million over the next 10 years through their Sun Trail program to establish the East Coast Greenway. It's a greenway that runs from Maine to Key West, about a 3,000 mile trail. And one of those projects that's in the FDOT work program through this grant that we got is to build a bridge between the stormwater park, which you see there at the bottom of the picture, over the FEC Railroad, which is kind of in the middle of the photo there, over to the Savannah Rec area. So we'll be showcasing not only the Savannahs with this trail, but it will actually go through the Indian Hills Stormwater Park and up into downtown Fort Pierce and over to the Lagoon, and then all the way up onto North Hutchinson Island on A1A. So it's going to be a Savannahs to Lagoon type trail. So we talk about education. It's going to be prime to touch on all the lagoon issues, especially along the trail with interpretive signage and things that we'll be working on in the future.
And the trail also connects into the northern Savannahs as well, where we have additional preserves and water storage projects for the future. So not only do we do the projects, do we invest and we find our partners, we actually make quality of life a part of a working project. So.
And that project right there, just the overpass, is going to be about $3.2 million of investment. So it's a great project.
I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a good report. Aaron?
Hi, yes, the department is extremely proud, supportive, and excited about Governor DeSantis and First Lady Casey DeSantis's announced launch of the website protectingfloridatogether.gov. I encourage everyone to write that down, protectingfloridatogether.gov. This site is going to be a tremendous tool that consolidates water quality data and other environmental information from multiple agencies to communicate the most relevant information to the public. Users can learn, users can learn about efforts Florida is taking to address water quality and view water quality conditions in a single interactive map. The website is also great because it includes information to help the public learn about the science behind our initiatives and also provides ways the public can engage water quality protection on their end. It's really fantastic, and like I said, I encourage everyone to be going to that site. And this is a first phase, so that feedback is going to be important to continuing the improvement of that site. And I'm also pleased to inform everyone that every action that was outlined in Governor DeSantis's executive order 19-12 has been completed or is ongoing. So we're really proud of that work, and we'll keep going forward.
Thank you, Aaron. And it's been an exciting week for Martin County because on Tuesday, the governor was in Martin County at the Florida Oceanographic to announce the Protecting Florida Together launch. So we were pleased to have him. And today, just as we met, my Martin County colleagues joined Governor DeSantis, South Florida Water Management, and the Army Corps, and the ribbon cutting for our C-44, the first completed IRL South CERT project. And I know it was an exciting day, and I'm expecting a video when I get back from my colleagues. So the S-44 STA portion will begin, I think, as they were there during that ribbon cutting, with the auxiliary pumps filling the SDA to begin the testing stage for operation, and that's even before the reservoir portion is completed. So Martin County allocated $27 million to partner with that project to ensure the timely completion. So it was a really proud week, actually, in Martin County. And then to Commissioner Zadowski's point on the C-23-24, over the last month, we've been to Washington twice, my colleagues and I, 4 of us for the Everglades Caucus, and 2 last week for the task force. And during several of our meetings, we advocated alongside of you for C-23, C-24. Now, from what I'm hearing, that there is likely a line item for about $9 million, or $8 to $9 million in design. So we are with you on that, and we are certainly advocating, and that's a great example of a neighborly partnership. So, and whatever we can do to get our federal partners to approve the $200 million, certainly in Everglades funding, we support. And I wanted to mention, it came up earlier this year, Martin County, the board, we have a 10-year, 10,000 septic to sewer conversion plan. We received DEP funding of $2 million for our Golden Gate septic to sewer project. That'll be 700 septic tanks offline, so we're appreciative of that. And we were able to get a Willoughby Creek stormwater treatment update earlier. Our board also provided direction to develop an integrated pest management plan to eliminate the use of glyphosate and glyphosate products in Martin County managed properties. So I think that I will definitely bring to their attention the Tech Surge Conference, because we're certainly looking for innovative technologies, alternative chemicals, and other mechanical treatments to work on those measures. And that's really all I have as an update, but again, exciting week in Martin County this week.
It is. It's a big week for Martin County, for all of Florida.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the collaboration.
I just have a few things, and I'll be brief. We did have the pleasure this week of doing the ribbon cutting on our Osprey Acres project, or actually it was last week, I believe. And that is a stormwater treatment project, but it also combines conservation lands and habitat recreation and restoration and trails, so everybody can go out and enjoy it. It's not just a fenced off utilities type of thing, and I appreciate everybody in this room that helped us get that done, and that was also there for the ribbon cutting. It was a lot of fun, and it's a really pretty area. The other thing, just to touch on Commissioner Hetherington's looking for different ways to deal with invasive species. Indian River County, I'm kind of excited to say that we actually have a goat herder that we are contracting with, who brings his goats out, and they eat the invasive species, and apparently they love Brazilian peppers. Who knew? But we have him right now working on some of our conservation lands at the south prong of the St. Sebastian River. So we can see how that works out. It's a trial basis right now. It's an area we would have normally had to use chemicals, so maybe goats are the answer. I don't know, but I'll keep you posted on that.
Yeah, keep us posted on that.
So that's all I have.
Seems like an inexpensive answer, too.
Right.
Wow, well, we have a water goat in Edgewater, and you've got goats that eat the invasive species, so maybe we're onto something.
There you go.
I just have one small announcement. On district staff on Tuesday next week is bringing a resolution to our governing board for approval. It's resolution 2020-01, pledging the district's support towards implementation of the CCMP. So keep an eye out for that.
Commissioner Lober.
Got a few things. First off, I'm going to be diving, assuming conditions are at all tolerable, on Monday, the county's artificial reefs. So I've got all my ethanol free in the garage, and I'm ready to go with that. Full tanks, all set. Next week, and I want to thank Dwayne, Dr. DeFries, for helping with respect to getting some materials together on the Lagoon. I've got a talk at DEMA, which is the Dive Equipment and Marketing Association's annual conference in Orlando, that focuses on the Lagoon and diving on the Lagoon and the impact the Lagoon has on the area. So I'm looking forward to that. Another item, I have just a couple other things here. In about 11 days, and when I say about 11 days, it really is just 11 days, we're going to have a change at the helm in Brevard County as far as the officer lineup. So with that process comes reevaluation of who's serving on which committees and who the board's liaison is to various agencies. So I don't intend to request to be reappointed to this, but I would ask that folks give consideration as to whoever's appointed from Brevard, nominating them to start moving up the ladder on the executive committee. Whoever it is, I'm sure it's going to be someone that's got a similar level of interest in the Lagoon and making sure that things move in a forward direction. Another item is I have a proposal that I'm putting forth in Brevard County to impose penalties on folks whose sewer laterals are identified as leaking, who choose not to fix them. We've had 100% reimbursement available for folks, allowing them to choose the licensed plumber of their choice or a licensed GC to arrange to have it done. All of the cost to offset 100% of the cost to have them fixed after we've identified that their laterals have been leaking. And we've had a double-digit percentage of folks not respond, not take up the offer of a free fix for their property. So I'm looking at exactly how onerous I want to make penalties, and I'm also looking at whether or not we can tie it in with their water bill so that if they fail to pay it, they simply don't have water. I think that's a very effective way of getting people to comply with something that's very urgently needed. Lastly, I just want to thank staff in particular for having been great to deal with over the past year. I've been involved in a number of different boards over my professional career and over my thus far short political career. But staff on this particular entity has been absolutely outstanding to work with. I don't want to compliment one individual because it would almost imply that someone else hasn't done what they need to, but everyone's been great. So I just want to express my gratitude for you guys for having been so great to work with.
Wow. Well, thank you, Commissioner. We're sorry that you're choosing not to stay with us.
I'll keep tabs. Don't worry. I'll poke in from time to time, perhaps.
I have a feeling we will be working with you. In fact, I had a conversation, talked to you offline with our good friend Glenn Storch, who's invited you to Volusia at Outriggers. We'll show you the diving reefs, and we will get that connected.
I appreciate that. I've got some family property up in New Smyrna, so it doesn't take much of an excuse.
Okay, we'll get that connected. So just couple things in my closing comments here. I had the good fortune this past week to spend an personal evening with Dr. Ann Shortell from the Water Management District and our new first Chief Resiliency Officer, Dr. Julia Neuschwait. She is phenomenal. If you get an opportunity, speak with her. She speaks 9 languages. This lady is a powerhouse in more ways than one. Her tours in Afghanistan and just her resume she's just more impressive the more I spend time with her. I want to, Congressman Waltz this past week led with our Florida delegation to try to modernize our water quality allocation for the state. This is really big. Our current allocation for Florida, the formula, hasn't been updated since 1987. And as a result, Florida receives the 3rd lowest allotment per capita nationwide. And in 2019, despite having the 3rd most significant water infrastructure needs in the country. And he says it's unacceptable, and he's working with our delegation to get that formula changed because he knows a commitment to clean water. Isn't that amazing? I didn't even know that. That's a pretty big deal. And also, and I know, Aaron, that you're helping us behind the scenes. Our goal is to connect with Governor DeSantis for a formal signing ceremony for our CCMP. We've sent several letters to him, and just recently, the other day, connected with some others that will help hopefully expedite this, and wherever he is, we will go to him. Other than Pensacola, I don't want to go quite that far.
And to clarify, I don't speak for Governor DeSantis' office, but definitely Secretary Noah Valenstein
Right.
is happy to be a participant and celebrate that with the council. The signing of that CCMP is a great accomplishment, and I know that Secretary's office is excited about it. So thank you.
And with our governor's commitment, like you just shared with us earlier, to water quality all around the state, this is good. This is good for all of us. So council, when we get a date and a time, if we can, we'll find out whenever that is, Dwayne. But we're going to do our best to make that happen. Also, then, can you put up that quick? I happen to bring my own PowerPoint. Briefly, we have our Mosquito Lagoon Reasonable Assurance Plan. We're very happy it's been approved, and I want to share a little bit with you. The second slide here, these are our partners in our Reasonable Assurance Plan between the county, the cities of Oak Hill, New Smyrna, Edgewater, and DOT, along with the DEP and our council, of course, and our Water Management District. But what's so important about this is Volusia County, we got involved before the waters were impaired. We're ahead of the curve, if you will, and it's a great project for us. So if you go to the second, what's the next slide? I just pulled up two of the projects. Here's one of our projects, the 10th Street Treatment Facility. This is part of the Gabordi Canal, and the Gabordi Canal and this treatment, which is this treatment facility right here, it's to a large-scale stormwater retrofit project that we're going to install a nutrient removal system providing treatment for our base flow and roadway stormwater runoff. The goal is this: when it's completed, we will reduce total nitrogen by 5,600 pounds per year and total phosphorus by 1,400 pounds per year. This is one of the projects that was awarded a $100,000 cost share grant for design from our council in August. And then the next project is the Aerial Canal Water Quality Improvement Project located in southern Volusia in Oak Hill. Again, part of our reasonable assurance plan to remove the total nitrogen by 1,300 pounds per year and total phosphorus by 210 pounds per year. We are in the design function. We just hired a contractor for design in this and working with other grant opportunities for both of these with the Water Management District and the DEP. So we're making really good strides in our reasonable assurance plan. Not only have we identified the projects, we are into implementation. So I'm just really, really happy with where Volusia County is. We're not where we need to be yet. I don't think any of us are, but I appreciate the partnership and the council and everything else going forward. With that, is there anything else, council members, before we finish the meeting, before we meet next year?
Madam Chair, can you send us all the information about that bill that's being considered to increase because I think each of us could do a resolution and have our own lobbyists assist in telling that story as well.
You know, that's a really, really good point, Chris. I will get that to you, Kathy, and if you could get that to all of us, and I think a resolution of support, the congressman would certainly appreciate it, and our entire delegation. I mean, not just Congressman Waltz, but the entire delegation.
Well, because they're going to be going into session, or can we approve a resolution without having a resolution written today? No? Can we do it after the fact? Because getting it up there sooner than later is, you know.
Yeah, in the past, how we've handled this, Madam Chair, is the board has given direction to the executive director to express support on behalf of the council as opposed to an official resolution.
Yes, and I can forward you the actual resolution. I have the actual resolution that the delegation signed. I can forward that to you. So if we can craft a resolution based on the actual bill, use their verbiage, we can do that, right? No?
Our policies typically preclude this board from passing a resolution that we don't have before you and on the agenda. Through the NEP process, resolutions get presented to the management conference through the management board. So again, the way we've done this in the past, when we've had time-sensitive matters, is to have the board direct or authorize the executive director to go out and express that support
I
via
understood.
correspondence, et cetera.
Okay, Commissioner Lobo.
Actually, I'll make it even broader. I'll make it a motion to authorize staff to draft the letter.
We can do,
Second?
is that good? Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any opposition to the motion? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. So staff is going to draft it, then can you send it to us, and then in our jurisdictions, we can just have the same thing for support?
First
Does
thing
that
I'll
work?
do is touch base with the congressman's staff, draft the letter, have them take a look at that letter, come back to you all.
Perfect.
With, to show you the copy. And then my follow-up, and we've done this almost every year, is, if I need to do some legwork up, talking to our, House or Senate members, depending on where this is falling at any given time, I will take your direction today as direction to follow through with this until it either dies or moves somewhere. And so we've been doing that continuously at the state and federal level. So I think I have enough direction from you to pursue, not just this front end piece, but where it goes next.
To move forward. Well, with that, happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and
See you next year.
see you in 2020. Huh?